not stuck in my head. I forgot how it was.
Oh.
So welcome to another movieboozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and today we are talking about our best of 2017 lists. Top 10s, because people like to list things. And with that...
Don't have one per page. You're welcome.
What was that about one per page?
You know how when you go to a list on a website, you got to scroll through the website.
Oh yeah.
And every entry in the slideshow loads a new page with new ads, and it's just slow as fuck. And sometimes your processor crashes, and your website bogs down.
Yeah. Slideshows
Slash Film is notorious for that.
Yeah, that's nothing but they're trying to just maximize clicks. And
here at Movie Boozer, our lists pour like a fine. Fine
comb. Oh, okay.
You know what they pour like? They pour like any booze, because booze is liquid. So
and we have no ads because
we do have ads.
Oh, we do have ads? Oh, we do. Okay.
On the site, not in the podcast.
Yeah, right. Okay. Unless someone out there is interested.
I really like Popeye's chicken.
Don't make that a slogan, because there could end up being ads on these videos later.
And this ad was brought to you by, I spotted the first thing in my Refresh Purified Drinking Water, the Jewel Osco grocery store generic brand of water, because it's the bottle of water closest to my seat right now.
Isn't that Safeway?
Safeway, I believe, is the same company that owns
Refresh. That's good ass sparkling water.
This podcast is also sponsored by the official licensed product of The Room, the talking bobblehead Johnny figure.
Which they're going to release The Room in 3D, or at least Tommy Wiseau would like to.
He would like to.
I would watch
plans.
That.
Well, George Lucas couldn't even release the prequels in all of them in 3D when he planned it. So
that's because he made the wonderful decision of putting out the movie that everyone hates first.
I went to go see it in 3D. I don't know about you guys, but
I did not.
Oh.
I thought about it though.
Yeah, I got the collector's Darth Maul 3D glasses for it.
Oh, so fuck! That would have been awesome.
We do need to jump into our best of, so we're gonna go ahead.
Well, wait a minute, Ken. Who's on this podcast today? We are joined by.
Well, you, Bill.
Yes, hello.
And Bill, who likes to sing Gilligan's Island theme.
Who's been muted because of that.
He's being...
until he can learn otherwise.
And actually, he can unmute himself at any time. He's probably just not listening at the moment.
Yeah, I think he's off camera. Yeah.
And Hawk Ripjaw.
Oh, hello.
Mahalo?
No,
hello. Oh, that would have worked too, though. That's what hello in Hawaiian means, right?
I guess. I thought it was what is that saying they say in hello, goodbye, hello, aloha. Yes.
Yeah, I think
that's right.
Mahalo's also a greeting in Hawaii.
There's Bill Leon.
I just know because I've called people in Hawaii as part of my work in the past, and sometimes they answer the phone by saying mahalo. So.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Anyway.
And then you talk about your business, and they're like, oh, fuck.
So, Bill Leon, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. What's up?
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to start by going through it. As we did last week with our bottom 10s, we're going to list off our numbers 10 through 6. Unlike last week, we're going to, if you have something you want to say to explain why you chose that, you can go ahead and do that as long as it's a brief description. But we won't get into deep conversation until we hit our top 5s.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and start with Bill Arsenault. What is your number 10?
10 through 6. I'll just give a few like.
Are we doing 10 through 6, or everybody's 10 and 9 and 8 and so on?
Yeah. Is that how we're doing it? Or
okay. Tell you what. Let's round robin it, since we're gonna give a quick explanation as to why we chose.
That's what I thought.
So what are we doing?
Just say your number 10, and then we'll move on.
Okay. My number 10 is My Entire High School Sinking into the Sea.
Oh, I never saw that.
And do you have any thoughts on it?
Oh, sorry. I'm struggling to remember right now. Because I'm on the spot. Hang on, I got my letterbox pulled up here.
Bill Leon, what is your number?
Fuck, never mind.
Is that okay? That's what we're doing. Number 10's I, Tanya. Allison Janney is a shoe-in for Best Supporting Actress. Her performance in this is kind of the glue. I mean, Margot Robbie does a great job as well, but just all the performances and the kind of interesting look at a controversial figure in pop culture, I enjoyed it, and I would watch it again.
Have you remembered what you were going to say, Bill?
No.
Okay. Hawk Ripjaw, what is your number 10?
Oh, okay. Just it's on VOD right now. I highly recommend it. Go see it.
All right.
Okay. My number 10 was Get Out. It was kind of a Get Out and a Ghost Story kind of hovered around, like both of them slipped in and out of my number 10. And then I finished a Ghost Story, and it didn't quite grab me in like the midway point. And then I rewatched Get Out, and just the level of detail, it does some kind of things that a horror movie shouldn't really do in its third act. And it's too abrupt, but it does so many awesome things with little minute details and the way it's constructed, and then showing it to other people is a lot of fun. So that's why it ended up being on there.
Very good. And my number 10 changed so many times in the last month, but I finally settled on The Ballad of Lefty Brown.
Oh, Jared Moshe.
I never got to see that one.
I'm a big
Bill Pullman.
Yep, I'm a big Western fan, and there were a few Westerns that came out this year. This was by far, in my opinion, the best. It's less polished than a movie like Hostiles, and clearly a significantly lower budget. But what it does is it explores the genre from a compelling angle that hasn't really been done before by following the traditional sidekick character as the main character. And honestly, I think it's Bill Pullman's career best performance.
Awesome.
All right.
So, Bill A., what is your number 9?
My number 9 is The Happiest Day in the Life of Ali Maki.
That was a good one.
This was a very good one. I think I actually shared it with you, Ken, didn't I?
Zach and I watched it while I was in hospital. So.
Oh, okay, great. It's a wonderful little romance of a movie. It's very.
I would call it an anti-boxing.
Which is funny. Those are usually the best sports movies. Are the ones that have less to do with sports and more to do with character.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie is black and white, focuses entirely on the characters of Ali Maki and his love interest. And the movie's about how basically he's building up to this one important boxing match against the American that's coming over to Europe to have this big match. But he's really more concentrated on his small town life and this girl that he's dating. And so hence the title, The Happiest Day in the Life of Ali Maki.
And they have so much pressure they're putting on him to make this big.
To make weight, yeah, right. And but it's just this wonderful love letter and romance of a movie. It's just everything I love about cinema, really.
All right. Bill Leon, what is your number 9?
Coco. Just a really solid, well-executed hero's journey children's film that deals with Mexican culture, Day of the Dead. Really wonderful. The music, everything. Like I came from out of this movie was just really good feelings.
And that's higher up on my list, so we'll definitely get into that.
Okay.
All right. Hawk, what is your number 9?
Wind River.
All right.
Which it's a movie that really sticks with you. I think when I first watched it, I scrolled back to my first Facebook post on it. I called it uneven. And then the more I thought about it, yeah, it is uneven, but the parts that don't work are incredibly sparse, and the ones that do hit like a punch to the gut.
I'll be talking about it in just a couple minutes. It's my number 8. So I'll just add on to this and not talk about my number 8 when I get to it. I thought it was just a darkly brooding kind of thriller with excellent performances all around. And it highlights also a major and real crisis amongst the Native American population. It's an often ignored segment, specifically Native American women, and the fact that, that abuse on those reservations often goes unreported and many disappear. because it's sadly easy to get away with murder on an Indian reservation.
Right. And did you see the panel that Taylor Sheridan and his some stars and writers in the movie, or stars and producers in the movie, talked about when the Weinstein thing went down?
Yeah, he straight up said, basically told Harvey Weinstein to go fuck himself.
Well, yeah. So if you watch the movie, I haven't confirmed this, but at the time of this, if a movie comes out on VOD, it will not have the Harvey Weinstein logo. He said, "Okay, I'm taking this movie away from Weinstein, and he pays back all of his remaining profits to this foundation, or I will publicly disown my movie forever."
Yeah.
Which is bold for his first film. And you just don't fucking do that, but he did it. So not only was it a great debut, and then the "Are You Flanking Me" scene will go down as one of the 10 cyst all year, but to have that level of passion for the subject matter, to be willing to throw your child into the fire is really, really admirable.
So I'll go ahead and jump into my number 9, is Silvio, which of course I have no doubt that we'll be talking about it in greater detail. But I'll just say my thoughts on it. The reason why it made my list is because it's a wonderfully low-key and silly film that has surprisingly high aspirations, heart to spare, and just this moving little message about being true to oneself and doing your creative thing.
Cool.
All right.
Sorry, that was cool. I like that.
We all know my number 8 already, so I'll go ahead and just bow out until number 7. Bill A., what is your number 8?
My number 8 is Okja, or Oksha.
Okja.
The movie that famously made a lot of people turn vegetarian.
Made me hungry.
Well, I don't know if it's famous for that, but there have been a lot of articles of people writing about that, saying they either are going to turn vegetarian or they have now turned vegetarian because of the movie.
Because of a giant cartoon.
Well, dude, it's very affecting.
Yeah,
and effective.
I don't mean to.
I know. I just want to really point out that that animation that they came up with, that creature that was completely CG and everything, was evocative, emotive, and made you feel very strongly for an issue you probably weren't thinking of beforehand. And that is the what is it? Factory farming, where you're just putting animals on conveyor belts and slitting their throats or shooting them in the head or whatever. It's it
drew some definite parallels to
the Holocaust.
Yeah, to Nazis and extermination,
to concentration camps and everything. And there's even one scene at the very end that's very sad, but it's also brutal, but it's also very silly at the same time, because you would think normally in another movie this wouldn't work, but here it does. Like that level of bravado from the director and from the crew to do a scene like that. I won't give it away, but it happens at the climax. And this movie hit me on all sides. I'm not a vegetarian. It didn't turn me, but I do pick and choose a little more wisely at the grocery store now because of it.
Now tell me, watching that movie, you didn't have a little bit of a hankering for some super pig ribs.
Well, I know they don't exist, so I certainly wasn't. But I was interested. I'll admit, I was a little like, I wonder what they're talking about. Like, how does that taste? But however, I was horrified at the same time, because there's a sequence where they actually take a little bit of meat out of Okja to serve as a test sampling. And I was like, oh God, that animal's still alive.
It says a lot about humanity, and if meat wasn't so tasty, I would probably care more.
But this movie's got great slapstick to boot. It's got great heart, and it's got a great message too.
All right, Bill Leon, what is your number 8?
3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which I don't know if this is going to pop up anywhere on any of you guys' list.
It's higher up on my list.
Okay. Well, I'll just say we'll talk about it later in the conversation, but fantastic performances. Really, in my opinion, I've heard some people the criticism against this movie is kind of strange to me. Like, I'm not really understanding what people had a problem with exactly, because I think that every controversial element of it is there for a reason, and it's used very well. And
I would argue that the people who have those problems with it misunderstand the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I've seen it 3 times in the theater, by the way.
Right,
3 times.
3 times.
Wow.
Good. I only watched it once, and I need to see it again. That's the thing. Like, I will say this about most of my list is there's only maybe 3 or 4 films on it that I've seen more than once.
Mm-hmm.
But this is definitely one that I feel like I need to watch again, and I think that the ending is ambiguous on purpose, just really to drive the point home of the fact that a lot of these cases that the movie is talking about end up ambiguous.
And I see where you're going with that, and we'll talk about it in more detail when I get to mine, because it's high enough on my list that it's going to be in detail. I'll say that. Hawk, what is your number 8?
My number 8 was Gerald's Game.
Oh,
I still have not seen a horror film this year that was as effectively creepy and chilling as Gerald's Game was. Not only because of the stuff of Bill A. Did you see Gerald's Game?
no, I still haven't seen it. I'm sorry.
Okay, I would recommend you do.
Okay.
There's an element of the woman is trapped there, and there may or may not be a specter in her room, which itself is frightening enough that I had to pause the movie, take a deep breath, and check all the locks on my door. But it also speaks to some other things, like the movie reminds you to consider where you're going to be when you are about to die, and what's going to go through your head, and who's going to be with you when that happens. And I think that alone on a psychological level is absolutely horrifying. So that's why I put that on there. I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
So, Bill Arsenault, what is your number 7?
My number 7 is Blade Runner 2049.
We'll be talking about that one.
Okay, well, I'll just say,
Something, yeah.
I saw this in Dolby Atmos, which I think is, depending on, I guess, who's projecting it, is a pretty prestige format to see a movie in. Especially this one. The colors were popping, the visuals were popping. Everything was popping. This was a popping movie. It was so popping, it was more than Mary Poppins. But this movie gets
that is an underrated joke.
That's so stupid of me to say. I know.
That's a great one, though.
Okay, well,
I liked it.
The movie. I'll have another movie on my list that is kind of related to this because it's about the writer of this movie, or one of the writers of this movie.
Okay.
But, this movie brings up so many great sci-fi issues and themes in it, and it keeps you guessing, man. As to where it's going and what it's.
I'm going to go out on a limb. I think that it is superior to the first Blade Runner in every way.
That's not really a limb so much as it is a commonly held opinion of several fans of this movie.
Yeah, a lot of people really do feel that way. I don't know. I think both the movies were made in different times. One was, of course, the 80s. This one now, and they have to kind of play to who's going to be watching it. In that particular generation. And
I will say,
one was
I
by
find
a
it quite
director who
rich
knows
that
how to service a story. One was by a director who doesn't know how to service a story.
I'd say I found it quite rich that Ridley Scott said that 2049 failed at the box office because it was too slow.
Oh, well, he's an ass.
Right? Although I find it interesting that a lot of the concepts and script elements of 2049 did come from Ridley Scott. He was in the writer's room and gave input on almost everything, according to him.
Well, I think the movie works.
I think as an idea person, Ridley Scott's great.
Yes.
And for creating a visual
template.
Template. Yeah, exactly. I think he's great. I just don't think you can trust him with storytelling elements.
Well, sometimes.
So, do you think in about a decade we can hope for Exodus, Gods, and Kings 2049?
Maybe 3 decades.
If Denis Villeneuve does it, then maybe.
Well, he's busy trying to tackle Dune right now, so let's see how that works out.
After Dune, he's going to do Cleopatra.
Really? Wow.
He wants to, yeah.
So 2049, one of my favorite cinematic experiences of the year, something that I recommend everyone, get a chance to see on as big of a screen as possible and just let it wash over you.
Yeah, too late for that, but.
Okay,
all right, Bill Leon, what is your number?
My number 7 is a swerve. I swapped this out with my number 4 so that I could talk about something. My number 7 is Lemon, which we will talk about later. But this film is like, it's bittersweet. It's like you like sour candy, and then you eat the sour candy, and then you're like, oh God.
I don't know if I've ever done that with sour candy.
Yeah.
This must be like really sour.
Not a reaction like that, but
I really enjoyed like what a bleak outlook this movie had, and
Willy Wonka sour candy.
I've heard the criticism against it is people like it's too episodic. It's this, it's that.
Oh,
and
fuck them.
I agree, and we'll get to that. But
yes.
So
Lemon is a great exercise in existential horror.
I loved horror. I'd never had that thought watching the film, but
I think there's some horror to it.
Okay,
horror less in the terms of fright, but more in the I don't know where my life is headed, and I have no way of turning the wheel in another direction.
Okay, yeah.
Or I know that my life is headed in a very bad direction. Like even to the stuff where Michael Cera's character, which is like 5 degrees extra asshole of regular Michael Cera, is being all successful.
On someone else's list,
yes, it is.
Then let's save it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really enjoyed this. So
okay,
who's up next?
Ken, I think.
Actually, Hawk is up next.
Oh, Hawk. Okay.
Number 7.
My number 7 was Brawl in Cell Block 99.
Nice.
That one just fell off my. It was my number 10 up until like yesterday.
It's my number 7 right now, but I think by the time we talk about Lemon, it's might get booted off in favor of Lemon because I'm starting to remember how much I love that. But in any case, who else in here has seen Brawl in Cell Block 99?
Mm-hmm.
I've never.
Yes.
Not. I still haven't. I'm sorry.
It's a pretty awesome modern grindhouse movie. Great performance by Vince Vaughn. Really like it. This is one of those movies where you love to show to other people because there is some gnarly gore in this movie, especially in the back half.
What's wonderful about... I'm
ahead.
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there.
I was going to say, obviously they had a ton of fun designing the gore effects, which are completely practical in this movie.
The writer and director of this film, S. Craig Zoller, did Bone Tomahawk as well. And I don't think there's a filmmaker out there whose films have... I mean, honestly, I would say Zoller's films surpass even Quentin Tarantino in terms of being, from a writer's perspective, incredibly sharply written and yet containing just heavy exploitation gore elements.
And the dialogue is some of the best out of the year. The dialogue just flows incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
Just with the way that the back and forth of the actors, it's got this smoothness to it that just really draws you in. You don't really think of like this is dialogue by characters. You think of this is a conversation that human beings are having. But it's got a stylism to it as well that doesn't feel as on the nose as Tarantino, but is in that kind of same vein as being very, very rich with detail and character.
Vince Vaughn's underrated as a dramatic actor. I really like his work in drama.
What else has he done as drama besides Domestic Disturbance?
He had a wonderful sequence in Into the Wild.
Oh yeah, and he was also in the
in that
True Detective season.
Joaquin Phoenix Anne Heche movie way back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Which one?
It was the one where Joaquin Phoenix plays a best friend who was arrested in a foreign country, and Vince Vaughn is convinced by Anne Heche to go over there and to take responsibility for his equal actions in the crime in order to lessen the punishment.
That sounds like a comedy in which Owen Wilson came with him.
No, he's not in the movie.
Play Pigeon. That's what it's called.
No, it's not Play Pigeons.
Joaquin Phoenix is in Clay Pigeon.
Yeah, he's in that one, but it's not that one.
Oh, then I'm thinking of something else. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
sorry.
What?
I don't know the name of the movie. I'm sorry.
My number 7 is The Devil's Candy.
That's a good one.
Yes. For me, the Devil's Candy was hands down the best horror film of the year. It's got this really cool, stylish, heavy metal atmosphere. And
It's metal as fuck.
Oh, yeah. Not only that, but in my opinion, just the most creative, low-budget sound design. There's a recurring horror element in this, in that several characters in the film hear this chanting, like demonic chanting, that starts as a whisper and grows louder. And one of the characters tries multiple times to drive it out of his head by blasting his electric guitar. It is really cool. It's got this tension that builds to a awesome finale, and does not rely on cheap jump scares at all. There's
I think there's one.
There's one moment in the film that is like a fake jump scare, and I think it's his way of saying, that's all you're getting.
Yeah.
Instead, it's just about being intensely disturbing and creepy. If you have not seen this film and you like and you like metal and you like horror films, just watch this movie.
Even if you don't like metal, you can appreciate the metal in this movie.
Well, I like steel. Is that the same kind of... not the movie. I mean the actual material, steel. I mean, and iron. I think those things are very valuable to culture and society. Will I like this movie because of that?
Yes. So
it's
it's sharply directed, wonderfully acted, and what's great about it is, as creepy and disturbing as it is, it also has a sense of humor that it's not like an overly jokey movie, but it hits you with humor just when you absolutely need it.
Yeah.
And this movie has some of the legitimately the most terrifying moments I've seen in a film before.
I was my roommate came in like halfway through and watched the rest of it, and at the end of it I was like, man, I forgot how intense that was. He was like, yeah, it seems like it.
Make sure if you watch this movie, you've got your speakers turned up on the bass. And
oh yeah, we have a new surround sound system. Well, not new. The roommate.
Well,
the roommate forgot that he had one and brought it down.
If you have a shitty sound system, put your headphones on. That's all I have.
Yeah, don't watch on your laptop without headphones.
All right. So, Bill A., what is your number 6?
You said that in such a cool way. What is your number 6? No, number 6 for me is the hybrid documentary rat film.
Ooh.
It's very provocative. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. It's kind of like a... Have you guys ever seen that sort of desktop documentary, Transformers: The Pre-Make?
No.
It's like a video essay on that uses behind the scenes footage of one of the Transformers films and uses like Google Maps and all sorts of other footage to kind of weave this interesting tale of cinema and where it's kind of going.
Is it interesting though?
I think it is. It's interesting.
It is Transformers.
It's stylistically interesting.
Is it transformative?
But they can diminish the effects of it. Yeah. No, rat film is similar stylistically in that it utilizes different forms of visual filmmaking that kind of break the chains of what you expect from a documentary. You expect from a documentary there to be like simple interview segments, talking heads, that kind of stuff. Following a person from behind, things like that. This kind of jumps back and forth between what I call desktop cinema, which is like, video essentially made on someone's desktop on a computer. It moves from like a video game, Atari or old style 80s computer video game, Google Maps type thing, to interviews and segments where you're discussing rats, like the culture of rats, and how it juxtaposes with the city of Baltimore and its history, with specifically its racial and economic history, and how the two are related very closely. And it's really scary and really anger-inducing to when you find out, and it's revealed by the end what the statement this documentary is making about about modern society and where everything was heading back then and is heading to now. And but it's done so in such a clever way that I felt bad it didn't make my top 5, but I feel like 6 is a right number. I'm like, if I'm gonna put it in my top 10, it's gonna be very close to the top 5. And this is something I recommend everyone check out. It's challenging. It's sometimes it's a little gross because it's involving rats, because we see a lot of rats in garbage and stuff. We see people go rat fishing, where they basically throw a fishing line down an alley with a little piece of cheese or turkey or whatever, and they act like they're professionals about it. They're talking to the camera like, yeah, man, we like to get this particular type of turkey because it's moist, it's meaty, and the rats seem to like it, so we get it all the time. It's like, oh, so you guys are connoisseurs of this, And so they do that. They get the rat and then they beat it with a bat. There's a lot of footage of things like that happening in this film, but ultimately it's about, believe it or not, it's about humanity, and specifically American humanity, and maybe the lack thereof.
I can get behind that. I mean, after all, the New York City subway pizza rat is my spirit animal.
You were just saving that for this, weren't you?
Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, is there any more?
That is a cool. I like the rat that bathes itself, that washes the soap into its hair. Have you seen that video?
Yeah.
That's a pretty funny video. It's actually like showering. Although actually it's not showering. It's just it's annoyed by the soap and trying to get it out.
Well, Hawk and I can both also empathize because we saw the most wonderful film about rats recently called Ratatouille.
Oh.
I don't know if I empathize. I feel sorry for myself.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing?
I would like to wash myself of that movie.
Low-budget Brazilian rip-off animation studio.
Of
okay.
Ratatouille.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Bill Leon.
Number 6.
Number 6. Work a number 6 up on him.
How the fuck do I follow this? People beating rats in alleys.
Any way you want, really.
All right. So my number 6 is The Big Sick, which it's a very logical place for Judd Apatow to go in his producing career. Finding out how true this is to life, and the fact that like Kumail Nanjiani went through all this, like seeing him portray this fictionally is it's powerful. It's like, damn. And I mean, like, there's a lot of stuff in the movie that relates to his life specifically. I had said this when I first watched it. I was like, I did not expect in 2017 for the comedian Kumail Nanjiani to make me cry, but he did it.
Yeah, I saw this in the theater and I got choked up.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically around the time when she wakes up from the coma, and there's like a, well, no, it's not just that scene. There's another scene where he's telling a first date that his mom set him up on that he's not interested in. There's actually another girl that he's interested in, and then she kind of tells him off a little bit, and it's done in a way that really is affecting. It's kind of hitting him in the soul. You know?
I felt like this was a very perfect, personal, coming of age story in your mid 20s. I don't know if you could call. I mean, they make movies like that all the time.
I would compare it in that term to like Sleepwalk with Me, where it's about a comedian who's on. He's just starting to discover what makes him a good comedian on stage.
Right. I completely agree with that. I was actually thinking it. I made a few Sleepwalk with Me comparisons in my head as I was watching it, just because it is like it seems to kind of become a thing now, where these kind of indie comedians will write their first film based on personal experiences that they've had to varying degrees of success, but I think that Kumail really pulled it off, and again, I was not expecting to get super emotional about this movie until about halfway through it, and then I knew, I was like, I'm going to be crying before this is over.
All right, Hawk, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is Good Time.
Ooh, okay. This is higher up on my list.
Okay, good. So all I'll say until we get to it is that it is such an entertaining movie, and
Yeah,
everything is about it is just so well constructed. I could not have asked for a more entertaining movie.
You would say that you had a good time.
I would say I had a great time.
This is David Lynch saying you're going to have a really good time. Go see the film Good Time.
cheese is made from milk.
There's a song that plays at the end of Good Time that is by one point something point never.
Oh,
What? No,
I said 1.1 Direction.
One on Tricks Point Never or something like that. I'll look it up by the time we get to the movie. With Iggy Pop, right?
Yeah.
Doing vocals, and the video for that also has Robert Pattinson in it, and it's very strange and kind of crushingly bleak, and it's an interesting companion piece to the movie. So if you haven't watched that, Bill A, I recommend you watch that as well, as kind of a piece to add on to this movie.
Was it the end credits song?
Yeah, it was the end credits song, yeah, but
Okay.
there's a music video that goes with it that still features them. Is kind of like a one commenter suggested it's a what if had they gotten away with their heist.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
But it's very strange. He gets out of bed and goes outside, and there's a big ass mole rat digging through the trash, and they kind of stare at each other, and that's it. But it's kind of there. I don't know. That song is very horrifyingly sad to me, and I think the video exhibits that really well. But we'll get onto the movie and why it's so good once we get to it on your list.
I think.
Okay.
All right.
Oh,
well, it's my turn to work up a number 6 on them.
Is that like a saying now? I'm gonna work up a number 6 on your ass.
Well, you've seen Blazing Saddles, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Number 6. That's why we go riding into town, a whopping and a whooping.
Oh, okay. I got you.
You mean you spare the women? Uh-oh.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, not quite. Watch the movie. So anyway.
What?
I heard someone's phone go off, so distracted me. My number 6 is Only the Brave.
Oh,
the firefighter movie by the director of Tron Legacy.
Joseph Kosinski, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard great things about this one, and I feel bad for having not seen it,
This is probably the movie that surprised me the most over the year, because I went into it expecting something, pretty much like not unlike movies like the
Ladder 49 in the Forest.
Yeah, that, or the movie about the Boston bombing, the movie about the Deepwater Horizon spill.
You're expecting a Peter Berg kind of
exactly.
film.
Yeah, that and what I got from director Joseph Kosinski was a deeply emotional and human drama, beautifully acted. I would argue that Miles Teller had a double threat this year of ignored performances. This and his performance in Thank You for Your Service, both spectacular. In this film, he plays a former drug addict who's trying to clean his act up, and he's burned a lot of bridges, and he attempts to he's trying to get a job as basically a firefighter for this this country
Forest
believe
fires,
based out of Arizona, forest fire fighting outfit, and really, it's a tragic story that just is full of solid performances, and I mean a hell of a cast. I mean, you've got Josh Brolin also. You've got Taylor Kish is actually really good in it. Jennifer Connelly is good in it. Andy McDowell's good in it. Jeff Bridges has a nice little role. I'm not. This is all I'm going to say about it. Just go in looking for a movie with solid performances that tells a true and sad story beautifully, and the dialogue is sharp too. So, all right, now we're into it. Number 5 is Alive.
Yes, now we're getting into the nitty gritty. My number 5 is a movie that Hawk was just talking about. Good Time.
Oh, goody.
Perfect timing.
We just get to talk about it right now, huh? Yeah. I love this movie. I think it is. Robert Pattinson has had kind of an interesting career since Twilight. I mean, everyone kind of wrote him off, like thinking, okay, he's the heartthrob guy, kind of like with Kristen Stewart, like, oh, she's the girl that was in Twilight, whatever. And it turns out they're actually well accomplished actors.
People were saying that Robert Pattinson just took Twilight to kickstart his career.
That could be the case. I could see that
for better stuff.
I could see that being the total case, actually.
Isn't he like on the record as saying that Twilight is stupid?
Pretty much, yeah.
Probably, yeah. He's gone on to do Cronenberg work with Cosmopolis, and I believe that movie Ken and I saw, the one that takes place in Hollywood.
Hollywood Maps of the Stars?
Maps of the Stars. Yeah, that movie was messed up.
Hollywood Maps.
The movie.
He had a role. He had a role in Werner Herzog's Queen of the Desert, which is not a great movie, but he got good in it.
Herzog, yeah,
Yeah, Werner Herzog.
I've noticed this about that kid ever since, because I wasn't aware of him before Twilight, and then I saw the Harry Potter movies. Really, aside from the first two, the first three after Twilight, I saw Goblet of Fire, and I was like, oh, this Robert Pattinson kid, he's been around.
Yeah, I mean, he's been acting. Twilight was what got him known.
Yes.
And now he's taking chances. Now he's taking on projects that are a little out there, and Good Time is out there, but it's not so out there that it's like weird. It's just this movie's very rhythmic. You know what I mean? It's almost a synth in a way. 'Cause not just the score. I mean, the action and the beats that the action takes on are very I don't know what the right word is. I want to say hypnotic, but I also want to say
there's not really any other movie this year that has had quite the same level of forward momentum as Good Time.
Yes. Okay. Progression. Yes.
Yes.
This movie, if you don't already know what the plot is, it's about two brothers. In one who is a kind of we're not really sure what his disability is, but he does have something, and it's never quite clarified, but he does go to a social worker every now and then to kind of get services. And his brother, Robert Pattinson, who kind of drags him along on these different thuggish kind of incidences. And the latest one is a bank robbery, which ends up going south, and his brother ends up in jail. And to get him out, he has to do one thing after another, after another, after another, in this very long night where nothing goes right.
Basically, the one thing that Robert Pattinson's character is good at is fucking up.
Right, but he's also very strategic about it. Like, he's able to weasel his way out of certain stuff, but eventually it all, is going to catch up to him. It's just a matter of time. But he's good at kind of planning out his next move until he isn't. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to catch up to him, but he's going to run out the clock until there's no time left.
He is a just degenerate life gambler. He bets big, and sometimes his bets pay off, but the problem is just as many go horribly wrong.
Right, and that's key to the movie too. Is that I think I wrote about this film for Occupy.com in that it has as much to say about economic insecurity and anxiety as any other film that is more strongly about those themes. In recent memory, it's not so much like profound about it, but it's certainly a movie kind of like The Drop, the movie with James Gandolfini and
Tom Hardy.
Where it's very much about desperate people getting in over their heads. The setting being very, like a neighborhood that used to be prosperous but isn't so much anymore, and you're dealing with people who are, very needy, but they're trying to make things work. That kind of stuff.
Urban Decay.
Urban Decay. That's a good way of putting it.
Not to be confused with his brother George Takei.
Yes, exactly. Robert Pattinson is, you can tell his character is kind of good-hearted in a twisted way, but the problem is that he would be better off, his brother would be better off without him, honestly. Even as much as he loves his brother and as much as his brother loves him, that's a relationship that shouldn't be happening because they're better separate.
I would Robert compare, Pattinson is better.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I would compare the relationship he has with his brother with. You see so many sad stories of these mothers who just simply are incapable of caring for their child. They love their child. They just can't. They either don't have the know-how or they don't have the financial ability to care for their kid. But really, that kid is better off being put into someone else's custody, and it's very much like that.
Kane, you made a very good point upon finishing Good Time, is that the movie ends in such a way, there's no need to reveal it, but the movie ends in such a way that really bullet points the fact that Robert Pattinson's character is not the focal point of the narrative, it's his brother. Even
though his brother is really only in the movie for
from the beginning and the end. He's only like in the tippy toes of the movie on both ends. Yeah.
Robert Pattinson is both the protagonist and the villain of the movie. He is his own villain.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly how to put it. He's in a relationship with his brother where he's almost using his brother as a crutch, as a reason to commit these crimes and to be living the way he's living.
But to still have an excuse to say I'm a good person because I take care of my brother.
Right. It's a very toxic relationship, one that needs to be excised immediately for both of their sakes, really. And thankfully, what happens at the end happens. And Hawk, earlier you said that it was the end credits ending of the movie is very sad. I would say it's sad, but kind of optimistic a little bit.
I say that the way the credits song was used in the end was very optimistic, but I say that the song itself is very sad.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got what you're saying now. Yeah, it is sad, but what happens to everyone, I would say, is potentially optimistic. It seems to kind of suggest that there might be some good times ahead for for these characters, including the brother, who was actually played by one half of the filmmaking team, the Safdie brothers.
Right. As far as the ending, I thought the ending was very emotional in a very good way. There's almost kind of like this, the way what they do with that scene as the end credits play over the scene as the song is going, and there's kind of like this holy shit, it's finally time for me to relax. Because this whole movie has been so intense.
It was ramping up. Every scene was ramping up like, oh my God, when is he going to get caught? When is this shit even worse for him? Because nothing's going right. He breaks into, he tries to get a bail bond. That doesn't work. He tries to break his brother out of the hospital. That doesn't work because his brother ain't fucking there. He tries to steal some drugs. He tries to steal some money. That doesn't work. He tries to steal some drugs. That doesn't work. He tries to do this. It's like this comedy of errors.
Yes,
but done depressing and very in an action 1970s thriller kind of way.
And the soundtrack,
is a lot more comedic, which is a great example of how to take an originally funny script and make it darker but still kind of funny, and a direct antithesis to Suburbicon.
And
Yes.
when you say 70s, as far as the soundtrack, I mean, One O Tricks Point Never. I just looked it up. It's One O Tricks. That's how you pronounce it.
One O
okay.
Tricks. Okay.
So anyway, One O Tricks Point Never. The soundtrack for Good Time is very heavily inspired by late 70s, early 80s electronic music like Tangerine Dream.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
yeah, I got that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, so like those early Michael Mann movies has that same kind of feel
Definitely
to it.
a Michael Mann feel. I got that definitely. At least in the
editing.
rhythm. Yeah, the rhythm of the movie, the way the movie was, like Hawk said earlier, the forward momentum that has a very mannish tone to it. You know, that was very very good.
And the soundtrack, the soundtrack set to the sequence where the wrong guy he rescues from the hospital is talking about how he got to where he is right now, and just this montage of how he went. He was like he got on probation, and he's tripping balls, and he's at the amusement park, and it's like this guy is just a stream of consciousness of events and just all kinds of shit fueled by drugs, and the soundtrack is just this awesome like concussive synth track that like really marries so well with that sequence, and it's one of my favorite scenes of the year for that reason.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the next one.
Good Time. Go see it.
Good Time. So, Bill Leon.
What is my number 5?
Yes.
Yeah.
Alive. Yes.
All right. So this is a very specific pick for me, and I think right now, just thinking about it, I'm getting so. My pick is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
All right.
Anybody who says that the first movie is better than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is wrong. That doesn't make Guardians of the Galaxy 1 a bad movie. I think it's great.
Yeah, I would say these two movies are kind of like on the polar ends of a spectrum in terms of emotional resonance. You know, like they're both equally great, but they're different. You know, in terms of what they're going after. Like one is more about this, this one's more about that. And of course, we're going to get into that in a second. But yeah, like for people saying that is kind of silly.
I don't understand it, and it's like I've said this before, which is I think the first Guardians of the Galaxy, strong 2 acts. The first act, or I'm sorry, the third act of the film has "We Are Groot," and that's, I mean, the scene where they're all holding hands and they do "Child," like, it's I guess, but you know, fucking Lee Majors or whatever his name is. I know you guys liked him at the time in 2014, but I've never.
Lee Majors?
Is that his name? Lee Majors?
Lee Pace.
Lee Pace. Who the fuck is?
You're thinking of fucking
Lee Daniels?
The $1 billion man or the $1 million man? Or
oh my god!
I think the guy is like, we can rebuild him. We can make him stronger, faster. You know, I think it's that guy.
Oh, I fucked up already. But yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I think. You know how like Red Letter Media shows those jokey clips of Carrie Fisher? It's a film about family.
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is a film about family, way more than The Last Jedi. And I like The Last Jedi. I'm not here to poo-poo on The Last Jedi. But Guardians of the Galaxy did the whole family thing way better, just from the premise of it being this band of misfits that come together and are kind of forced to stick together, and they're kind of, you know, all different, and Rocket has his issues, and Drax is, I'll be honest, Drax in Volume 2, some of his jokes,
they didn't really fall flat. They were just kind of maybe repetitive, possibly.
I laughed at him calling Gamora a whore in the first one, which I know a lot of people have taken issue with since then, and I'm just like, it's a joke. Especially being a fan of James Gunn and knowing the kind of humor James Gunn likes to do. Like, yeah, for me, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was just like, oh, this is like a really great, like this. I'm really interested to see where James Gunn goes as a writer from here, because he's never gotten the chance to flesh out his characters as much as he has with this franchise.
Yeah.
But that's really why this is I have watched this movie multiple times over the year, and I can't get enough of it. I just think that the cast and the writing and the conscious effort to actually develop these characters into relatable people, right down to like, who the fuck saw coming that you were going to shed a tear because Michael Rooker sacrificed himself. Yondu sacrificed himself. Yeah. Yondu sacrificed himself for Peter Quill, and I was legitimately sitting there crying in the movie theater because I was like, yeah, like they took something in the first movie that was a little cliche and gave it the proper lore and the fleshing out to make it work. I don't know if I'm like really, how am I doing?
You're doing okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you're doing fine. I loved Yondu in both movies. In the first one, he seemed more like the gruff, kind of father figure that Peter Quill probably shouldn't have had, but he was lucky to have. And then in the Volume 2, we found out we got to see that fleshed out a lot more. In Volume 1, by the end, when he opens up that what's supposed to be the Infinity Stone, and then you see the little troll doll, and then Yondu gives a smile, like he knows. That was like a little message to Yondu from Peter Quill, a little joke, but also a little, well, thanks for letting us go and putting the stone away.
Those were the fun, make you smile parts of the movie that flesh the characters out, and right. I'm probably gonna use that term a lot. Flesh the characters out, which is something that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 did in spades. I can't even, like, every single, even new characters, the Mantis and Drax, that was an interesting development, and see how their relationship, despite the fact that he's kind of mean to her, like
he kind of likes her at the same time, but that's a very, Drax has a very childlike aspect to him. It's not just because his people don't know what metaphors are. It's also just him, his personality. He can be very violent and act out, but he's also kind of got this wide-eyed look to everything, kind of like Groot in a lot of ways. He and Groot are very similar in some aspects. I loved Rocket's little arc in this film too.
Rocket's arc and his relationship with Yondu is one of the highlights of the film. One of the great points of the film.
It was kind of him learning not to be as much of an asshole as he usually is, and to open up a bit more. And that last shot of Rocket crying as he sees the funeral procession and the celebration of life for Yondu is very touching.
I teared up in the theater watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which I've become a lot more emotional in the past few years, and I cry at movies a lot. But I legitimately, if I'm in public in the movie theater, I'll be like, oh, don't, Guardians 2. I was like, I'm letting this loose. I don't fucking care. This is. It's also
such a colorful movie, isn't it? Like, not just in the writing. I mean,
well, no, you're right. You're right. Yeah,
like visually.
Which
there was so many pieces to this puzzle, of the effects team and coordinating with everyone. James Gunn must have been like fucking going through, like, pulling his hair out all the time trying to get this to work.
I would say before Doctor Strange, but kind of before Guardians 2. I don't know. I mean, like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole kind of has an emphasis on muted colors. So I understand what you're saying. Yes, it was a very colorful film, and it was very visually striking at times. But for me, the script is what the most important thing here, especially the way that it dealt with fatherhood, who your father is, who raised you, like all the stuff Star-Lord deals with. And then on top of that, you have Rocket bonding with Yondu as well. So you see Yondu, like, basically right up until Yondu sacrifices his life, you're like, this guy, he was just trying to do the right thing. And Michael Rooker being the fucking actor, like, of all people, Michael Rooker being the actor that just sells it Oh,
Yeah,
what's the
I
walkthrough,
don't know.
buddy? What do you need a walkthrough on?
Yeah,
I have
Andrew,
no
so-
idea. I'm sorry.
Breath of the Wild.
What?
I'm making jokes.
No,
but,
I agree with the Billy
I
on
guess
James.
someone in my house is talking really loud and it's coming through.
if anybody in person or online tries to tell me that the first Guardians film is a better overall movie than Guardians 2, I really, at this point, I'm just like, well, you're objectively wrong. Period.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that's not even. I say that without hesitation, because this was the Empire Strikes Back of hopefully a very solid James Gunn led Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. I felt like this was the film. Like, the first one was great. It was really. There are a lot of emotional moments in that too, but this film really took the time to say, okay, we're gonna flesh these characters out into more than just sassy raccoon 80s boy who wants to fuck the green alien girl because he watched Star Trek as a kid. You know, fucking Gamora and Nebula. Oh my god! Like, yeah, their whole subplot in this movie with Thanos and like what a shitty dad he was, and I can't express enough. Just like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, maybe to me might be like the most effective emotional Marvel Cinematic Universe film that they've released so far.
I can see that.
I've kind of gushed enough. I just
We'll go ahead and move
I have a
on.
really specific thing that about Guardians 2 that stuck with me. During Yondu's revenge sequence, where he breaks out of prison on his ship and sends his little arrow thing flying around the ship, and Come a Little Bit Closer starts playing.
I want to say this. I didn't even talk about the soundtrack and how fantastic that is. There's so many elements of this film that I could go on about and say, like, these are just, it's great. It's great. It's great. It's great. What I really took away from it was, you know, how well written it was and how well the characters interacted with each other, blah, 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 blah. Continue, Hawk. I'm just saying, like, when you bring up the soundtrack made me think of, like, oh, there's another great element that I didn't even think to talk about there.
What I was saying is that during the last leg of that sequence, that an entirely different choral arrangement of that song just pops in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which when I first heard it after watching the movie, I was like, I don't know if I imagined that just because of the intensity of the scene. And so I asked a couple of friends that had seen it. I was like, am I crazy? And then one of them got back to me and said, no, you're not crazy. They really did that. And apparently that is a, who's the composer? Tyler Bates. Apparently that was Tyler Bates, right, Bill?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know the people.
I think it was Tyler Bates. That final part where, like, instead of just the one by the original band, it's like an entire like high pitched chorus, like a really bombastic arrangement of it, which has not been released yet. That was composed and arranged entirely for the film, and they haven't released it yet, and they'll release it at some point when James Gunn finds the time to do so. But that bugged me for weeks, whether or not that actually happened in that movie.
and the song "Come a Little Bit Closer" by Jay and the Americans is just unequivocally one of the coolest songs of its era. Just pre-Beatles rock and roll.
Let me say this. In addition to that, James Gunn using it to score that scene, the way that those two things come together in a way that theoretically probably shouldn't.
Right, it's a scene of a guy murdering a bunch of people.
Yeah, it's
right in a Disney movie.
Yeah, but it's
look at how fun it is. All these people dying. It's violent and fun and silly.
That's. I mean, there are. Well, for the record, there are android hookers in this movie.
Yes, there are. That Howard the Duck sleeps with.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Sylvester Stallone also sleeps with too.
I love this movie. I will, like, again, like this specifically. Just, I'm gonna bring it back to the beginning of my review.
Bill, I'm gonna go out on a limb. You love this movie.
I love this movie, but
it fleshes things out.
What Carrie Fisher had to say about The Last Jedi, it's about family. This
Okay.
I
So,
love The Last Jedi, but this is
we're
more
moving
about
on.
family.
We're moving on.
This was the film about
Moving
family
on.
that made $1 million.
Moving on.
Moving on. Number 9. Number 9.
What?
Number 9.
Okay. Oh,
Your number
Number
5,
9.
huh?
Number 5.
My number 5 was The Shape of Water.
Oh,
Higher up on my
that's higher
list.
up on,
But I'll probably end up switching The Shape of Water in good time, honestly. But yeah, that's higher up, so we can move on.
Oh, The Shape of Water is getting bumped down on your list.
Because
Anywho.
fuck that movie.
Because
Whoa.
fuck that movie.
Whoa, I don't fuck with
No,
meatballs.
talking about good time, I think it brought out more specifically unique elements of greatness than Shape of Water had in my mind. I mean, there's going to be some interesting things on my
We'll be
list.
talking about it later, so
Hawk is
I'm
the
not
opposite
saying
of
about Shape
Michael
Water. I'm
Shannon.
saying
Hawk
my
is the
list
opposite of Michael
has
Shannon,
some-
and then he wants a girl that does talk.
Oh.
my list is going to be a lot of movies that are on my list because of the way that they affected me and not because of how objectively well made they were.
That's how I
my
typically
list is
rank lists,
yeah, my
yeah.
list is completely it's.
I always go by feeling.
I gave up 2 years ago with trying to rank the best made movies. Who
Yeah.
made a better film? Who's gonna get the Oscar this
Who
year?
the fuck cares?
So
What's that-
Ken, what's your number?
What's that BoJack Horseman joke where the game show is like who what do Hollywood stars think?
Hollywood stars, and what do they know? Do they know things? Let's ask.
Okay,
well, I know
Ken,
that my
sorry.
number 5 is Coco.
Oh, great.
Oh, that was my something. My number
9?
8.
9. It was 9, which is all right.
Yeah, we mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
So, Coco is, in my opinion, it's Pixar's best movie in over a decade. It is a tremendous achievement of a film visually. From a writing perspective, it's a perfectly simple story that immerses you in Mexican folk culture in a really cool way. It has excellent music. The voice acting is solid. It's kind of the whole, it's a whole kit and caboodle. This is really a film that has everything for me, and I was particularly a fan of how well this film deals with death and dying in a serious and dramatic way, despite the fact that this is a film that is, a PG-rated movie for children and families, and the animation is a huge step up for animation as computer animation in general, particularly in the way facial animations are handled. I think I mentioned in our original discussion of Coco that the way Mama Coco, the elderly lady in the family, the way her face is animated in that final sequence definitely made me break down crying, because it is so dead on for how an elderly and mentally failing person can have that weird change in their personality, where suddenly they've been triggered with something that they remember from their childhood or they remember from their youth, and they're able to, for that brief moment, speak clearly and coherently about something. Sometimes after days of effectively being, in a vegetative state mentally, and just that it's that change that occurs. They nailed it, and it was as someone who's experienced it himself, witnessed it. It's heart wrenching, and the movie is a sense of humor.
Can I say this? You, especially in regards to having a grandfather or a grandmother who's going through dementia or anything that would really make the mind deteriorate, so to speak, you dealt with that in your 20s. I've dealt with that in my 20s. I think what's kind of crazy about Coco coming out now, which it's like there are kids now that have great grandmothers, great grandfathers that are still alive, and so like smaller children are dealing with this firsthand.
Right.
And for them to see a movie like this and be able to put it into context that way, that's really beautiful. When I talked about the worst of lists last week in the Emoji Movie and how like that had nothing for children to take away from it emotionally, you know,
you're right, that there's a lot that a kid can take away from this.
It's so I wasn't even really thinking about that when I watched Coco. I was really just appreciating like, oh, this is a great little kids movie, hero's journey kind of thing. They got the music in there, they got the mariachi stuff. There's a lot of Mexican Day of the Dead imagery. I really enjoyed it on that level, but as it's resonated with me over the past month that I saw it, it's just like, damn, yeah, like there's really a lot of stuff that kids now are dealing with that I never had to deal with back then because, you know, my great grandmother was dead before I was ever born. And it's, yeah, I can totally see that. And
people are certainly living longer now than they were previously. And so, you know, it makes sense that to an extent, people living longer means that there's afflictions which may not have been as common or as well understood until now. And the way this film explores that, but and that's just one piece of this puzzle. Another thing I have to compliment Pixar on doing is making a film steeped in Mexican culture that has an entirely Hispanic cast, with the only exception that I can tell is a brief comment, a brief appearance by John Ratzenberger, but that's just because it's a Pixar film, and of course, this is a movie that needed to be an all Hispanic cast, and it was perfectly chosen for that. All right, that's all I got to say about that. Anyone else have?
I agree with you. I think the cast did a wonderful job. I don't pay attention to that kind of thing. That's not really like
that's kind of a icing on the cake. It's not. It doesn't change. Well, okay. The Book of Life, for instance, is a movie where my opinion was shifted a bit because of the fact that the movie cast these.
There was Channing Tatum was in it. Ice Cube, yeah, Ice Cube was in that.
And the character he was playing was, you know, a mythical figure in Mexican mythology, and it felt wrong to me to cast Ice Cube in that role. Now, I mean, I'm not from Mexico. I don't have any Mexican blood, so you know, I mean, perhaps I'm speaking out of turn here. I just thought it was a little bit. It felt like a studio just.
It has Mexican blood. It is free.
I will say this about the Book of Life, which is that the Book of Life, that the guy that directed the Book of Life, he had made a cartoon on Nickelodeon years prior, which was kind of a steeped in Mexican culture kind of thing. I believe this was his first directing job, so it's admirable that he was able to get made what he got made.
Right. I certainly applaud the fact that he was able to get it made. I just think that there were too many compromises made in.
I feel like, well, that's what I'm saying. It's like I feel like if the guy, the El Tigre guy, that was his show on Nickelodeon, was El Tigre. If he was in charge of his project and he could have cast anybody he wanted, put in any music that he wanted, it probably would have turned out similar to Coco.
It may very well have.
I really feel like the fact that they were like, you're a first-time director, you only have this TV show under your belt. We kind of have to get involved here so that we can market this, kind of like the Emoji Movie. We got to market this to stupid kids that are just going to go see it because there's a pop song in it.
Oh, and by the way, I just want to say this in advance because I'm sure that there are people. There was a train of people who were saying, you know, sarcastic lines like, "Oh, Coco, I liked it better when it was Book of Life." You couldn't get more different in terms of story, but also it's worth noting that Pixar has had listed as one of their works in progress a movie relating to the Day of the Dead for at least 7 years now.
I believe it. Yeah, I believe it. Pixar is always.
I wish they made a Grim Fandango movie, personally.
That's too adult. It's too adult.
Yeah. But
and
no,
again, like I will say this: like the only way you're gonna get a Grim Fandango movie if it's like some Anomalisa shit, and Anomalisa got snubbed awards wise,
right?
So that ain't happening.
All right, so number 5 or 4, Bill
Number
Arson.
4.
My number 4 is Silvio.
This is higher on my list.
All right.
Okay. Well, just for me to say one little thing on it, I ranked it number 4, not because it didn't deserve to be higher, but because there were other films I kind of wanted to spotlight more. And number 4 ain't too shabby. That's a good place. It's my favorite number. So it's kind of
yeah. I'm not saying my top 5 is a film I would give a toast to, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd give all these films a toast, honestly. But top 5 definitely. You know, it's almost like you might as well not be ranking them. You know, they're equal in a way. But just for the sake of a list, yes, this is my number 4.
We'll talk about Silvio.
All right, so Bill, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is a film called Mommy, Dead and Dearest, which was an HBO documentary. And I have reviewed it on the show, so I will try not to repeat too much of my review from the show, specifically because Dr. Phil covered the same story that they cover in this documentary, and I watched the Dr. Phil coverage of it, and I was just like, oh, you cut the balls off this story because it's CBS versus HBO. You can pretty much figure out the rest from there, where it's like, you know, HBO really told the story and interviewed the people and got into the real nitty gritty of it. CBS was kind of turned into this fluff, not a fluff piece, but more of like a manipulative Dr. Phil. Let's make our audience feel bad kind of thing.
So you liked the film?
I liked it a lot. I've rewatched it a few times since I first saw it. This is a very fascinating, real story about this crazy woman who had a daughter and convinced her daughter that she had all these diseases when she didn't, and that she was physically disabled, mentally disabled, all these things. Munchausen by proxy. Just straight up fucked her daughter's mental state up.
Oh, I've been wanting to see this one.
Watch it.
Yeah. HBO, you said?
It's an HBO documentary. It's probably on HBO Go. It is definitely on HBO Go. There's no question about that. But seeing the Dr. Phil coverage of this really made me go like, because I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, you left out this, you left out that, you left out this. And it's on CBS, so it's probably just like, oh, we can't talk about this on CBS because it's too sexual, it's too graphic, it's too violent, you know. And I'm just like, I'd rather hear the whole story, and it is really fucking fascinating, like what went down and the aftermath of it, everything. Like the HBO documentary really does get into like every little facet of this. They talk to her birth father. They talk to people she was in prison with, the daughter that killed the mother, and all this stuff, like their history together, scamming charities to go to Disney World and, you know, get free houses. All like it is on some tickled shit. Which honestly, my next pick is on some tickled shit too. But this is like it is just an interesting journey to see like how this progressed and how this developed, and the fact that it all happened is just like it's one of those things. It's that movie for me this year. Like almost every single year they come out with a documentary of like, oh, this crazy shit happened and we documented how it went down.
I think I might have a thought on what your next pick is, but I won't say what it is until you pick it, because if it's not that, then I have a suggestion for you.
I think you know what it is, or maybe you don't actually, since you say you have to suggest, but we'll get to that when we come to it. Mommy, Dead and Dearest is just, it is, when you watch it, you're like, honestly, I was just taken aback the first time I saw it. When I was first hearing this information relayed to me, I was just like, holy shit, I can't believe this happened. It is a really compelling story.
All right. So, Hawk, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is Columbus, which I don't think anybody else besides Ken saw it.
Yeah, I'll let you talk.
It's on
Was
Hulu.
this on your worst of list last week?
No. It did not make my worst of list.
Okay.
I was just not a fan of the movie.
Yeah, it's on Hulu right now. I have no excuse not to
watch the movie. God damn it, it's a good movie.
God damn it, watch the movie.
It's I've talked about it at length. I've seen it several times. I really, really liked it because it's one of those movies that it's just these two people that are stuck in this one place and they have their passions, their inhibitions, and every conversation is this kind of slice of life type thing. The way they talk to each other, the way they interact, it's not really a love story. John Cho's character is way older than Haley Lou Richardson's character, so there's some kind of element of attraction between them in a sense, but it never really goes anywhere into anything sexual or anything like they have a thing or anything like that. They just they're friends, and the real romantic aspect of the movie is in the architecture and them exploring their passions and figuring out what they want to do. It's made by a guy who has made himself known doing a lot of video essays on cinematography and visuals and films. And so he takes a lot of that knowledge that he's built from making those video essays and has made this film that is incredibly visually and cinematically satisfying. And it's not really symmetrical, but there's the establishing shots of the architecture, the clear love that he has for architecture, and the way he lets his characters explore that architecture through the lens, I think is just really, really cool. And one of the big things that made this onto my top 5 list is that I think at any point a person will have this feeling where they know where they want to go and they see where they're at, and they come up with the reasons with why where they are at should supersede where they want to go. And I think that's kind of a scary thing, where you could always be stuck where you're at because you're either afraid of where you could go with what you're capable of, because there's just one thing tying you down, whether it's worthwhile or it's a piece of you that you have to let go. And it's going to be different for any person that has that feeling. And I think Haley Lou Richardson's character has to explore that, and what she eventually ends up doing is a huge deal for her character. And the way that it explores all that, I think, is very, very subtle and very quiet and very, very interesting. And this is such a great debut for the director Kogonada, and I'm really excited to see what else he does.
All right. And my number 4 is Darkest Hour.
That was a good movie.
Yeah. So Darkest Hour, first of all, I must say, I love a good period piece, and this is a good period piece. But for that is just the surface level reason why I enjoy this movie. This is a performance piece first and foremost, and I don't think I've been wowed by a single performance in a film more than I was by Gary Oldman's performance as Winston Churchill.
Ever or this year?
This year, and honestly, it's one of I would say one of the great all-time performances that I've ever witnessed.
It's very, very good. I mean, if you don't look into Winston Churchill's eyes in this movie and say, "Oh, I see Gary Oldman's eyes," you will not recognize Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill.
And by the way, he's not like the makeup job they did on him. They're not trying to make him look exactly like Winston Churchill. They're just trying to make him look human, because there's limitations that makeup has. And what they do, first of all, this is a miracle of makeup because it is flawless. It looks like it does not, you cannot tell that it's a makeup job at all.
I mean, they could have done the Jared Leto Chapter 28 route and just have him gain a fuck ton of weight.
Oh, God. Yeah, they might have. And
I sacrificed my health for my art.
Yeah.
The difference being that Chapter 28 was a shitty movie
and it didn't even get fucking released.
Yeah.
It made like what, 4 figures at the box office?
Pretty sure Cracked.com wrote a whole article about that and how, people, actors who sacrifice themselves for their art for terrible movies.
Yeah.
It happens.
Anyway,
but the cigar budget for Darkest Hour was $50,000, and Gary Oldman got nicotine poisoning from it.
Did he really?
He did.
He
Seriously?
insisted on smoking the same cigars as.
Like unfiltered,
Yeah, no.
like super nicotine tobacco.
Yeah, no, I'm not fucking with you. Like he got nicotine poisoning from all the cigars in the movie.
That's pretty funny.
People were tough on the subject of method acting.
People were tougher back then.
And with that, besides the performance there, this is a tightly directed film. Joe Wright directed it, and if you're not familiar or offhand, some of his films he's done, Hannah was
Pan?
one of his.
Yes, he did The Great Pan.
Yeah.
From the director of Pan.
Well, okay, to be fair, he's a very striking director. He doesn't necessarily strike out with his films, but you can't say that his films aren't bold and brazen.
I mean, Pan was still a good-looking film.
Right, that's what I mean. They're very themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's going for it all the way.
He also directed Atonement, which is an interesting tie-in here because Atonement is a very large chunk of the film deals with the Battle of Dunkirk, and a very large chunk of Darkest Hour deals with the political side of how the British dealt with the Battle of Dunkirk. Of course, I've mentioned numerous times on our podcast, there were 3 British films last year that all dealt with the Battle of Dunkirk in one way or another.
Their finest, yeah.
Yeah, their finest, and of course, Dunkirk. This is the best of those films because you can't say one film dealt with the battle better than the other because they all dealt with different aspects of it. Their finest doesn't even take place during, it takes place after, and it's about making a propaganda film about it. But what this film did best is hitting the human side, not just dealing with Winston Churchill, but the subplot involving Churchill's female secretary, who what she was going through, and her experiences as more of a common British civilian, and the panic of not knowing what was next, because Britain was legitimately in fear at this point in the war that they were going to be invaded and that they were going to have to fight a land battle on their island against the Germans. I would say the most emotionally affecting scene in this film is the scene where Winston Churchill decides that he's going to take the train. He's never done it before, and he decides to do it, and he takes the train, and he winds up having a conversation with everyone in the train car and seeing how the British public is taking this situation, what their morale is like. And just you see him for the first time, this sheltered rich man who he's never come out of his shell, really, finally seeing how the average person is treating the situation, and it changes his outlook completely. Beautifully made film. This is it's so easy to make a film set in a historical period that deals with historical events and make it stuffy or overwrought. This film also, in my opinion, has some of the best cinematography and one of the most compelling scores of any movie of the year.
There was one shot that kind of bugged me.
Okay.
It was like a dramatic scene, and I don't know why it did, but there's a shot of the battlefield, and there's a transition. It's like, oh, it's also a dead guy's face, and it was kind of a really weird, really weird shot transition.
I legitimately have no idea what you're referring to.
So there's a shot of like a battlefield. It's like torn up and shit, and like the camera's panning to the right, and then the shot kind of it morphs into a close up of a dead soldier's face covered in ash.
Okay, I don't remember that specific shot, but honestly, the way you're describing it, it doesn't sound distracting to me.
Yeah, it sounds kind of cool, actually.
I mean, it was kind of cool, but it's like, oh, okay, calm down. It's like it was kind of one of those, like, it was a cool shot, but it took me out of the movie just a little bit. I really don't know why.
Sometimes you have to step over the line to know where the line is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, as long as he pulled it back a little bit after that, that's fine.
He did. No, I'm not contesting that this is a well-made film. It is a beautifully made movie, and the only reason I want to say, like, I'll kind of come around to this a little bit, because, like, I hope this doesn't win the best cinematography Oscar, because I hope that Blade Runner 2049 does. But I think that this is a strong contest this year for cinematography, especially between those two movies.
I will agree. Yeah, both of those films contained excellent cinematography. So,
but yes, Darkest Hour is very, very beautifully shot. You know, and like I said during the podcast when I saw the movie and when you saw the movie, is that I was initially very distrustful of Ben Mendelsohn's character as the king, because he primarily plays villains, and so I just don't trust him. It's like he plays villains. He's got a villainous face, so that was kind of funny. But his character ended up being a really, really good character.
And Ben Mendelsohn's also a great actor, and
he's a very good actor. He plays the bad guy in Ready Player One.
You know, I have to say,
that's an example right there. Yeah,
yeah. That whole movie's a bad guy, probably.
My favorite Ben Mendelsohn performance is in Killing Them Softly, where he plays the kind of drug addicted stoner crook who is truly incompetent in every.
I got these cheeseburgers, man.
I think that I understand the reference, but I think that Killing Them Softly is a horrifically underrated movie.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, it is criminally underrated.
I love Mendelsohn in the Place Beyond the Pines.
Yeah.
Is that like? Should I watch that? Because I think the guy that wrote and directed Zero Day wrote that.
You mean the school shooting movie?
Yeah, which was really compelling. I thought that movie was really good.
Which one?
It's called Zero Day.
Like a found footage.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, he co-wrote Ben Coxio. He co-wrote.
Yeah.
He co-wrote Place Beyond the Pines and directed Zero Day. That's an interesting factoid. Yeah, that's neat. Yeah. Zero Day, I would recommend it as a great companion to Elephant.
When I watched,
it's probably better than Elephant, actually.
The main thing about Zero Day is when I watched it, I thought it was real. I thought that was actual footage. So when I found out that it was staged, I was like, I had a breath of relief where I was like, oh, thank God. Because it's kind of intense.
That's the magic of filmmaking.
Well, it's based on the Columbine Diary videos that the shooters made.
Yeah,
and saved, locked away, you know. So it's kind of that, you know. So it's very dark.
So Bill, what was your number 3?
Okay, my number 3. My number 3 is kind of interesting for me personally, because this year the director of this movie released 2 films. Both were equally great and delved into the similar themes, and I felt could have both made the top 10, probably right next to one another. But I ended up choosing this one over that one. This movie is the documentary Escapes by Michael Almerida. Michael Almerida had previously done a version of Hamlet with Ethan Hawke. He also did New Orleans Mon Amour. Really good movie. I recommend people check out on Amazon VOD. And this year he also did Marjorie Prime, which Hawk and I are huge fans of.
That's a very good movie.
It's an excellent film. And really, I'm kind of sad that it didn't make my top 10, but for the purposes of making this list, I wanted it to be kind of interesting and to be diverse.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to put 2 films by the same director, even though those 2 films both equally deserved placement. I chose Escapes over Marjorie Prime because you wouldn't normally think of a documentary that's really just an interview with one person to be about as heavy themes as Marjorie Prime is. Marjorie Prime is very much about memory and a little bit of identity, but specifically memory and time, and how those two kind of are different, but also intersect when it comes to who we are, what makes us who we are, and who we end up becoming, and who we're remembered as being. And if that's a truer version than the one we lived, but as we lived as. Escapes is a documentary following the writer of Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049, Hampton Fancher. This is how it relates back to Blade Runner 2049.
You mentioned that it's going to be a film on your list that would relate to that writer, so I just wrote that down.
Yeah. It's a great little. I don't think it's been released on VOD yet. I want to say it has. If not, I can, I can maybe find some. I'm sure it'll be available soon, like some information on it. But it follows Hampton Fancher basically in his apartment or house. Hampton Fancher has been in Hollywood since, I believe, the late 50s, early 60s. And he's lived an incredible life, meeting all sorts of celebrities and rich people and poor people alike. And he's almost like a real life Forrest Gump, except he's not, he doesn't have a disability. He at least not one that's known or out front. He weaves these interesting tales that are seemingly disconnected by time. Like one tale that takes place in the 60s, another in the 70s, another later on, so on and so forth, but are connected by the string of serendipity, which he's closely connected to. And it's almost like magic. We see his life as he's talking about these events. We got this like talking head type interview setup, but we also see the footage of movies he starred in as an extra or as a lead actor, even from movies and television shows alike, and also TV shows and movies that of people that he was talking about in these stories. Like I met up with this one guy and I got into a fist fight with him, or and then they show footage of that guy talking or whatever, And every story ends with this interesting little bit where it's like, if that didn't happen the way it happened exactly as it went down, he would not have been here to tell that story, or he would be in a different place entirely. Mm-hmm. It's so, like I said, magical. It's so, fascinating. Just, someone going over their life and the events that made them who they are and where they could be going, and how everything just kind of falls into place to make us who we are. This movie kind of, has this hook in it about memory that's a little different than Marjorie Prime. Specifically because it's one guy telling us his history, mm-hmm. these 3 or 4 specific tales. So we're getting it directly from him, but he's telling it in such a cavalier and articulate way and charismatic way that it's almost like, did it really go down that way, or is that how you saw it? Is it not that he's a liar, just he never comes off as a liar. He comes off like he really is telling the truth of the matter, but still there's that part that's like, you don't forget, and the fact that he's in Hollywood, that his life has involved movies and television throughout, can't be denied, because that's a medium where the pen is mightier than the sword, so to speak. That's a medium where something has been has been captured visually and printed onto film or digital, and now that is the truth of that matter forever. That's what people are going to remember more than the actual event, is how it was captured and expressed.
Print the legend.
Exactly. There you go. And it's his life being connected to Hollywood in that way, and then how he became a writer of one of the most influential sci-fi films ever made, and then topped it with the sequel. It is really says something too about all of this, all the themes that are expressed in this documentary. It's a very low-key documentary too. Like I said, it's really just 90 minutes of him talking to the director and a couple of cuts in between conversations or during conversations where we see footage that kind of matches what he's talking about or expresses something a little more deeper about what he's talking about that's related to his life in some way. Like maybe he starred in Hee Haw as a background extra or something,
Right.
and they show a quick cut of that sequence, or he starred in a soap opera, or he starred in this or that, and they show quick cuts of that, and they pull these bits of footage that match exactly what he's talking about. Like, oh, I met this wonderful woman on the East Coast, and we had an affair, and he goes into it more deeply than that. But then they'll cut to footage of him in a movie where he meets up with a young woman, and it matches in that way. It's just such a wonderful little slice of Hollywood, but it's also such a grander scale documentary on memory and what is real and what can be real and the kind of the craziness and the chaos that is our lives and how things just kind of happen to make us. It's really wonderful. And
yeah, I'm really excited to see that.
Yeah, I'm
probably not summing it up nearly as well as, or maybe I am. Maybe I'm overselling.
Yeah, no,
you
sold it on me. That's for sure. I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Yeah, so this is high on my list because of all those reasons and more. And it does all this with very little, and the fact that it's able to do it with very little, I mean that's just a credit to the filmmakers and to Hampton Fancher too, for that matter.
All right, so Bill Leon, what is your number?
Oh, is it Hawk that's supposed to go next, or is it Bill?
No, it's Bill Leon.
Okay, that's right. Okay, I'm sorry.
Don't question me.
So this a lot of the things you were talking about thematically with your previous film, Bill, I think this could apply to mine. In between seasons 2 and 3 of the show Nathan for You, I got a Hulu subscription and I was watching like Drunk History, and it like hit the end of its run and it started playing Nathan for You. And I was like, oh, this is a wonderful little show. Like it made me laugh a lot. It was very absurd and it did a lot of stupid things. As the years have gone on with Nathan for You, holy shit.
It's evolved, hasn't it?
It's evolved. My number 3 is called Nathan for You Finding Francis, which is the season 4 finale of Nathan for You.
This pick is similar to my pick last year of Beyonce's Lemonade.
It is a little similar, yeah, because it's not technically a film, but this
it'd be like picking Twin Peaks: The Return. Like it's a little like is that
not quite.
Not quite. Did Lemonade get a
Yeah.
theatrical premiere? Was that
it got an
screened in
HBO? It got an HBO premiere. It didn't get a theatrical.
So no.
No. Twin Peaks, however, Twin Peaks: The Return did show in a theater though at the
when
Metrograph in
when
New
I
York.
talk about Nathan for You, the series, there's a great little moment somebody filmed at the premiere of Finding Francis where Nathan comes out to introduce what they're about to watch, which is the finale, and he says, "We've come a long way from poo flavored yogurt." Which, yeah, that's in the first episode of the show. He convinces a frozen yogurt company to implement a poo flavor.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to me that like that this show has gone to a place where it's like somehow just an exploration of this one man's life who is a fake Bill Gates impersonator. Oh man, I know that
he's a fake Bill Gates. Like he's faking being an impersonator.
Yes,
or he is an impersonator.
He looks the part, I guess, and like he can play the part. But apparently, he lied to the Nathan for You production company and told them that this was his full-time job when he had never impersonated Bill Gates before.
Oh, I see.
That is only revealed in this special documentary episode, whatever you want to call it. They get into that information, like they uncover that information through this crazy journey. of trying to help this very sad, lonely old man reconnect with the love of his life from his early 20s, who he's not gotten over. I know that Hawk and Ken have both also watched this, so I'm gonna pass the buck here and see what these guys have to say about it, because oh man, whereas I loved Mommy Dead and Dearest for being so real, I really loved Finding Frances for riding the line of like what's real and what's not.
I think that Mommy Dead and Dearest is real from what you've said. Nathan, for you, Finding Frances is honest.
Yeah. I think Werner Herzog's theory on documentary filmmaking applies here, where while Finding Frances doesn't necessarily explore the realistic truth, it explores the ecstatic truth.
Ecstatic truth, yeah.
And that's something that I think is very potent.
When you get to the climax of this, I'm going to call it a film again. Like I think I've already justified it being a film. It's feature length. They premiered it in a theater for an audience. I mean, it didn't get a theatrical run, but it plays more like a movie than an episode of a series. You can watch Finding Frances and know nothing about Nathan For You and still get what it's all about.
It is worth noting that noted documentary filmmaker Errol Morris wrote a glowing review of it. And
it should be noted too, Nathan For You is officially listed on Letterboxd.
Oh, there you go.
Nice.
Very few TV shows or other that aren't movies are listed on here. So yeah, they consider it, I guess, because it got a theatrical release a little bit. So
yeah, and
I love Nathan For You, like everything about it, and I've loved how everything has evolved. It started out as one of those stupid like kitchen nightmares. A guy comes in and turns a business around, but all of his ideas are total bullshit. But now the show, and that was probably like the funniest iteration of it on a base level. It's like one of my favorite episodes is when he goes to a pizza parlor. And he decides that to boost their business, they should introduce a policy where if the pizza isn't delivered in like some crazy amount of time, like 15 minutes or less or whatever, they get a free pizza. But the free pizza is like the size of the palm of your hand.
We didn't specify how big the pizza would be.
They don't specify how big the pizza is. And customers are so fucking pissed off. And Nathan always comes up and he's got this kind of like passive way about him, like, oh, I'm sorry, sir, but we didn't say how big the pizza was going to be. But it's always had this base level of real solid fun, and that's like all of his ideas are really fucking stupid and almost always kind of don't do any good for the business apart from being on this TV show. But now it's evolved into something so much more profound. Like he got to a point where he helps this one guy become a celebrity, and now he's helping this random character on one episode find his lost love that may or may not even be real.
You brought it up. The season 3 finale. I think the title of it is The Hero, where he pretends to be this guy who like literally has nothing going on in his life, and he impersonates him. He finds him a girlfriend. He walks across a tightrope pretending to be this person.
Okay, so now we're talking about the series itself. We do want to.
You're right. Finding Frances, though, yeah.
The only reason I mention that is because the series has evolved into something this cool.
That hero episode was a stepping stone to Finding Frances. You can't have one without the other. I don't know. Like I can't wait to see where this series goes from here. Just the saga of the guy, Bill Heath. Oh my God. Like he's such an interesting character, even though like he kind of shouldn't be. He's this dude, like they try to do hypnotherapy on him and all he can think about is college football statistics. I don't know. This thing is Bill Arsenault, if you have not watched this yet, make a point to check this out, because it is I feel completely comfortable in calling this not only a film, but one of my favorite films of the year.
So, Bill, this wasn't actually my recommendation, and I'll only mention this very briefly because it is a tickled style thing. Icarus, in which this biker notes that Lance Armstrong had doped for years using performance enhancing drugs for biking and always passed a drug test. So this biker decides to try to attempt to go through the same doping regimen and successfully pass a drug test with the help of a Russian scientist, and in doing so, accidentally unearths a huge conspiracy of decades of doping in Russian sports.
I gotta see this.
It's fucking insane. It's on Netflix. Watch it. You're gonna love it.
Okay, I gotta watch this.
All right.
Yeah,
so,
it's exactly your thing.
Hawk, what is your number 3?
My number 3 is Silvio, so we'll talk about that later.
We will talk about that later.
Anyway. No, that's on Bill's list.
My number 3 is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Oh, how fitting! Oh.
I get to talk about this, which is fun.
Is this higher up on anyone else's list or not?
Not mine, no.
Okay. So, first of all, I've been following the career of the writer and director Martin McDonagh for a long time. In Bruges is a fantastic film, as is Seven Psychopaths, which was my number 1 film the year it came out. And I maintain that movie is wonderful. And I recently had a chance to watch the short film he did that was actually an Oscar. And I believe it won an Oscar for Best Short Film when it came out, called Six Shooter. And that is a spectacular short film, and stars Brendan Gleeson. 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri is a logical continuation of themes he's been exploring his entire career, which is it's kind of the clash between tragedy and comedy, and how sometimes the most horrible things in life have a humorous subtext to them. And he does that in this film, which for the first time in his career introduces a solid female protagonist. That's something he's been criticized of having not done in the past.
Let's before you go any further.
Psychopaths, he literally references that fact. Yeah, you were saying?
I'm just saying before you go any further, this isn't a bold statement by any means, but Frances McDormand's a shoo-in for Best Actress this year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and
rightfully so. Yes, yeah, absolutely rightfully so.
So this is Martin McDonagh doing, in my opinion, the best Coen Brothers film that the Coen Brothers didn't make.
I want to stop you right there and just say that you said about Seven Psychopaths 4 years ago. Well, 2017, 3 years ago. No, 4 years ago. You had said that Seven Psychopaths is the best Tarantino film that Tarantino never made.
and that's I will maintain that as well. Mm-hmm. The thing about 3 Billboards, though, and it when we're talking like the clout of it being a Coen Brothers-esque film, not only is Frances McDormand the lead, and it's set in a rural, small town setting in which these quirky characters interact. Carter Burwell does the music.
Yeah.
Carter Burwell has done the music for all of the Coen Brothers films, really. And it's like Ben Davis's cinematography is dead on in its reproduction of now my brain is who typically does cinematography for the Coens again?
Roger
Deakins.
Roger Deakins.
He go Ben Davis.
Roger Deakins?
Yes.
Is it Barry Sonnenfeld?
Barry Sonnenfeld started.
Barry Sonnenfeld did cinematography for them like twice, and then he said, "I got this. I got this Addams Family job. I'm going to make the Addams Family." And
okay, Barry Sonnenfeld was their cinematographer for their first 3 films, and and those films have excellent cinematography. But I would argue Roger Deakins upped that ante even further.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
that's not to take anything away from Sonnenfeld's cinematography. I would argue Sonnenfeld would have done better as a cinematographer rather than a director. Shots fired. So anyway,
you ruined it with the shots fired. Continue. Continue.
No, I Sonnenfeld's directed some decent movies, but nothing.
He directed the pilot. He's directed cool stuff. Anyway,
nobody cares.
So 3 billboards. Besides Frances McDormand's excellent performance, first Sam Rockwell, equally powerful in a completely. His character Dixon and Frances McDormand's character Mildred are 2 sides of the same coin, and that's something that has gotten some people triggered out there in internet land because they see Sam Rockwell's character do all these horrible things, and they don't buy his character the way his character goes through an arc in the end. And I would argue these are people who didn't watch the film, because Frances McDormand's character goes through an interesting arc as well. Whereas Mildred starts off the film as a, albeit cantankerous, but lovable character. You start to see over the course of the film that she has some very distinct flaws in her personality. And she's not loved by a lot of people, and for good reason. She's not the best human being in the world. She ultimately means well, but then, in his own fucked up way, so does Dixon. He has his own perception of right and wrong. He's completely wrong and poorly. His perception is tampered, not tampered. It has been hampered by a terrible mother, and the thing is, though, both of these characters are mirror images of each other in their own way, and the way the film plays with that and plays with your expectations. Your expectation is that Sam Rockwell's character is going to emerge as this antagonist, and in a more conventional film, he would have turned out to be the rapist who killed her daughter, and there would have been this final confrontation. But instead,
that would have been an awful twist.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would have hated this film if that's what had happened in it.
Oh yeah, if this film was directed by Mick G, that's how it would have ended.
Hey, that's a cheap shot at that's a cheap shot at Mick G.
There is no such thing as a cheap shot at Mick G.
Yeah,
let me say this on Mick G's behalf. Actually, I was gonna say he's never tackled material.
Let's say this. Actually, I don't have anything.
I can just walk back your defense of Mick G.
Well, because I'm thinking
Please tell us. Defend Mick G.
As far as I'm familiar with Mick G's career, he's never tackled something this serious with like a fucking, in a way to where you can put it in front of other people and say you're supposed to take this seriously. I don't know.
Terminator Salvation.
I'm literally realizing how little I know about Mick G. So just
We Are Marshall, the fucking Matthew McConaughey movie about the plane crash that killed the football people.
Mm-hmm.
You mean football players?
Yeah, the entire
football people.
The entire football team.
There were probably fans on that movie, right? I don't fucking know.
There are some people who like that movie. I've not seen it, so I can't speak about that.
Yeah. Mick G's mom liked that movie.
All I'm gonna say is he directed 3 Days to Kill, so we're not going to talk about Mick G.
Okay, nobody can ever forget 3 Days to Kill. However, as much as I can make a joke about Terminator Salvation, that movie had a decent look to it. It was not good, but by God, that man tried, and sure as hell's not trying with 3 Days to Kill.
Yes. So we're not going to talk about Mick G anymore. Now, I've spoken a lot about the performances of McDormand and Rockwell. The entire rest of the cast is spectacular in this film. Peter Dinklage has probably the most, I would say the second most emotional moment in the film. in a scene where I would argue this is the most important scene in establishing Mildred's character, and in comparison to that of Dixon, where she shows her dark side as you know, she is essentially as self-centered as Dixon is.
The scene happens basically at the same time Dixon's in the bar.
Right. And oddly enough, it happens in the scene where Dixon truly gets a chance at atonement.
A chance. Maybe not he doesn't get fulfilled, but he's at least trying.
Right. And that's
a point that I always try to make with people who are criticizing this film, is I say this isn't really a movie about redemption. It's about attempting to find redemption.
It's about people who are going about their life and they're trying not to fuck it up. And the problem is people are human.
People. Yeah.
People are people, and guess what? A lot of the time they do fuck it up.
And the ending kind of sums it up. Like the when they do what they do, they go off on the car ride.
Yeah, they go on a road trip with the stated intention of going to kill this person who may or may not have murdered and raped someone. They proved by DNA he wasn't the guy that killed Mildred's daughter, but Sam Rockwell is so damn sure that this guy did something wrong. Let's just take our aggressions out on him. Exactly. And now that said, they leave it
open. We don't really know if they do.
And there's your small hint of redemption there, where she makes, they make the decision that they're going to figure out on the way what they're going to do. And that is, I think, a very powerful statement about human nature, and
how we kind of take things one day at a time, or should take things one day at a time.
Mm-hmm. One thing that's interesting that I found compelling, that I found interesting, is the way Woody Harrelson's character is treated. In that his character is kind of he represents probably the most moral and upstanding character in the film, and just everything goes into chaos when his character is removed from the film, and it's a really interesting what's the word?
Moment?
Well, I mean moment, but it's a
twist.
It's a high watermark. I guess you could call it a twist, but it's this point where the tide ebbs, and from
Ebbing, Missouri. Yeah.
Oh,
by the way, that pun was completely unintentional, but you're right. Wow.
Yeah. I wasn't thinking about that before. But there you go. And there is no town named Ebbing, Missouri. So I mean,
no, there isn't. And so
maybe that was intentional.
Did I just completely, while babbling and stuttering incoherently, hit upon a strange Easter egg?
Now you get to the Oasis.
Wow. I'm gonna have to think about that for a while. So we'll go ahead and move on to the number two.
Number two.
So Bill A, what was your number two?
My number two is probably a movie, Ken, you are not going to appreciate as being number two for your own reasons. It is Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Oh, wow.
Okay, settle down, everyone. Settle down. I promise we're going to get through this.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything. Just do.
It's okay, Ken. To start off with, I have no problem really with criticisms levied against this movie, because everyone's entitled to their own. Even if I feel like most of them are wrong or whatever, it's not so much that they were wrong in feeling that. It's just that I feel I'm more right in my feeling. But of course, because I'm an individual, and that's just me.
We are all entitled to our wrong opinions.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. I saw this movie twice in the theater because the first screening had some technical issues. I think the 3D filter was still on the projector when I was watching it. Not that it was blurry or anything, just it was dim and colorless, you know? And
that was the movie.
Well, no, actually, I went to go see it at another movie theater in town, and it was much brighter. The soundtrack was booming, bigger and louder. It was just an overall better, experience and feeling. So I kind of got to, reevaluate things in between. And I believe I rated the movie twice on Letterboxd, but I gave it the same score both times. But I appreciated it more on the second screening because I got to kind of revisit things that I was thinking on, and I got to, as Bill Leon said earlier, flesh things out better. That's just me, though. I was able to do that. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I think everyone kind of is at this point.
I kind of agree with you. I kind of completely agree with everything you're saying. And I didn't have any technical problems the first time I saw it. But the second time I saw it, I was like, okay, I get it. Everybody's just being a little bitch.
Well, I don't know if I was that angry about criticism. I am a big Star Wars fan, but I'm not so big of one that I think it's sacred. You know what I mean? I think it's totally open to interpretation and adaptation and changes and rewrites. I think it's totally open to being molded in whatever shape the director wants. I will say I am very fucking thankful Colin Trevorrow got his ass kicked off of episode 9. I don't think we want that guy doing a Star Wars movie. Not after Book of Henry. After Jurassic World, I don't want him touching a Star Wars movie with a 10-foot fucking pole. Go ahead.
After Book of Henry. That was my cell phone getting a text, which I tried to talk over, and it wasn't successful. After Book of Henry, I want to see Kylo Ren as a little kid with Leia and Han as his parents, and then, well, no, Kylo Ren's not going to die, so Han will die, and then they'll be like, "We got to kill the next door neighbor." I'm making
their next door neighbor.
Kylo just has a brother just fucking dies. And
they
makes him mad.
The one they don't talk about. The one who didn't have force powers but was kind of adult.
Oh, Rilo Ken.
Rilo Ken. Yes.
Rilo Ken, or his birth name, which would be Han. Han Kenobi, whatever garbage bullshit.
Ben, right?
It would be Travis Organa. Something like that. I don't know. Travis, are you done with the dishes, dear?
They'll name
and then
him
Leia and Han realize their life sucks, so they just move back to doing what they were doing before.
Who's the kid that got shot in Florida?
What?
I said, who's the kid that got Trayvon Skywalker would be his name.
I don't think I would do that, but I don't. Thank you.
But would you put Star Wars above doing that? Because they might.
I would put Star Wars above doing that.
I think most.
Not that using that name is bad, but if you're using it specifically to make that reference, then yes.
Yeah, then you would be.
That name could be used normally in whatever conversation, and you don't even have to think about that scenario. But I'm getting off track here. Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, the second time around, I still got it the first time, but the second time around, I was able to, like I said before, flesh things out more in my mind and appreciate what Rian Johnson was going for and achieving ultimately. This is a movie very much like we were just talking about Joe Wright, where it's made by someone who is brazen and bold in their approach. Whether or not they succeeded in the execution, we can argue about day and night. But I think some of us would have to agree that at the very least, this is his movie. He owns it. It's his. He went for a vision, he went for a story, and everyone was on board with it, and they all were gung-ho about it.
That's what I appreciate about this.
I love that. I love that those chances that it took, and the fact that Disney and Kathleen Kennedy and all of them went along with it. That being said, do I feel the chances that they took and the the subversions of expectations, so to speak, were those on point? Yes, I feel like everything was on point with this movie. I wouldn't be naming it number 2 if I didn't. I love that it like I said, it took chances, but it also did things that I honestly wasn't expecting from a Star Wars film, specifically in the photography and the editing and the focus of the story too. There was the one scene with the bombers, which is a little bit illogical when you think about it, like physics wise.
If you're talking about gravity and space,
yeah. Well, that I could buy into a little bit because they were like magnetized or some shit.
I agree. I'm on the same page as Red Letter Media. Like, who gives a shit about physics in Star Wars? It was a World War II reference.
Right, I got it. I
didn't think about it until somebody mentioned it.
Yeah, I wasn't. That wasn't a bother of me. That didn't bother me at all. But what I loved about that sequence was not just the ramping up of tension, like, oh my god, all these fucking bombers are getting destroyed. And on top of that, Poe Dameron's being cavalier, and he's like, "We can do this, yeah, let's get them, guys," And then you cut to the Empire, not the Empire, the fucking First Order people, and they're like, take out the bombers, we don't give a fuck about human life. And then they show what would eventually be Rose's sister, Rose Tico's sister, who's leading the last bomber. And she goes through this little sequence where it's like it might as well be a short film. It's her basically getting stuck in a situation where it's a no-win scenario for her. She's gonna die, but she can at least die fighting, And we see how like the way it's cut and constructed, it's done in this really neat way where it's like we don't really know this character. She's just a person, but we're given such information on her just through what's happening. And I ended up anyways kind of caring about what was about to happen to her. Even though I kind of knew where it was going, I still was like, all right, get there. Come on, you can do it. Let's get through this kind of thing. And then the rest of the movie, it was the resistance basically failing one mission after another and things just going wrong. This is very similar to Good Time in that sense of just series of misfortunes. Now, they didn't deserve it. Robert Pattinson did deserve it, but still, I loved every performance in this movie. I really dug what they did with Luke Skywalker. Like I said, Star Wars is not sacred. It's not like, it's like the Jedi text, it's not what it's about. It's not, you shouldn't be so stuck in the books. You should move out of it, get some air, that kind of thing. And, everything that they did in it and what it led to ultimately was just so mind-blowingly wonderful for me, because as a Star Wars fan, I was looking for, after J.J. Abrams doing episode 7, The Force Awakens, which was great, don't get me wrong, I really love that movie, but that was more of like a reintroduction and a reacclimation into the Star Wars universe with these sequels. This was like a readjustment and let's take a chance, let's do something different. Let's really reach out there into the galaxy a little bit more. And that being said, I think it succeeded for me. I know Ken disagrees, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
I also disagree.
And you disagree too. That's fine.
I don't disagree. I'm on the same. I agree with you.
It affected me kind of in not quite in the emotional ways that Guardians of the Galaxy did, Volume 2 did for Bill Leon, but as a Star Wars fan and as a fan of movies and where movies can take you, and movies being escapism, essentially escaping either your own situation or escaping into a situation you ought to know more about. This was kind of the perfect thing.
I think the movie is fine. I don't dislike it. It's I can see that it's a good movie. It's well made, but to me, I really can't get excited either direction. I think it is an okay movie with some really cool moments, and then of course the Casino Planet is prequel bad.
Yeah, well, I didn't think it was prequel bad. That I know that's one criticism I can understand people having.
Like it's not even the political stuff. I don't give a fuck that everybody on the political on the Casino Planet was arms dealers. Like I don't think that's a political statement. I don't give a shit about what the people are doing. I think that sequence was incredibly boring, and throughout that whole thing, I was like, I just want to get back to Luke and Rey doing their thing.
Wait a minute. We have to release these animals. They're being held against their will.
All right. Well,
no. What I'm saying is that was the only thing in the movie that I was really like, oh, we're taking a detour into this.
But it was still important for the one thing, and that was when she meets up with that little kid in that barn with the animal.
How is that important?
Well, you know, give me a fucking second.
I'm gonna disagree with you.
I've literally said one thing.
He asked one question.
Okay, you can go ahead, Ken. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I just asked my question.
Oh, you just asked it. Well, I was about to answer it before you asked it.
Yeah,
I was about to explain myself.
Okay,
and you put it in. So you're an ass.
Ken, I don't think you're an ass.
No, you're not an ass, Ken. I don't know where I was. Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. But Star Wars gets us all heated. No, I thought that was
Star Wars puts me in heat.
Ew. I don't want to be around you when you're in heat, man.
They say you use like a cotton swab for that.
Okay, well, look, that's everything.
Listen, all I gotta do is put on Rogue One, and I'm soft as a Q-tip.
As a Q-tip, aren't those pretty stiff?
Those are pretty stiff.
I wasn't talking about the.
You're talking about the tip of it, not the.
I wasn't talking about the shaft. I was talking about the tip.
Yeah, but if you rip the cotton off, it's actually kind of pointy.
Why are you trying to rip the cotton off of my penis?
You know what?
Because you presented it to me.
I don't feel like I have to explain that little sequence anymore. I think we've successfully moved on from Star Wars.
All right, so
let me just say, I love this movie. End it. There you go. Okay, that's why.
Enzo Amore.
Bill Leon, what is your number 2?
Oh, don't bring up Enzo.
I know
WFT soft.
I will say this before I say anything else.
Bill Leon, what is your number 2?
My number 2. It's on the back burner because it's The Shape of Water, and I know that some of us have it higher on the list.
Yes, that is very true. All right, Hawk Ripjaw, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is Blade Runner 2049.
Awesome.
I did not watch this today. I wanted to watch this today, but at the same time, I haven't seen Blade Runner since
You don't need to see Blade Runner.
Ever?
Well, not ever, but
I think to
understand 2049, you really don't have to have seen the first Blade Runner.
Blade Runner is an important film that I find somewhat boring, and I think that you can watch it to appreciate Ridley Scott's vision, but in preparation for 2049, you would be just as well served by going into google.com and typing in what do I need to know before watching Blade Runner 2049, and that will do you just fine. But I respect a lot of the themes and stuff that was presented in Blade Runner, but I think 2049 expounds on those themes and those ideas so well. Like there is so much in 2049 that is just fantastic in terms of Ryan Gosling's character discovering his existence and his humanity, so to speak. There's the
and also discovering the pointlessness of his discovery too.
The pointlessness of his discovery, like in the grand, without going into too many spoilers, in the grand scheme of things, very little of what anyone does in this movie actually matters, except for how it matters to them in their own personal bubble of existence and the people around them. And I think that's really, really powerful because
it's a powerful, profound, and sad notion.
And very sad. Nothing. these sci-fi movies, this is not a bad thing about Star Wars, by the way. It's like these sci-fi movies like Star Wars and Star Trek and so on and so forth are all about the chosen one and this protagonist who changes the entire universe through their actions and completely shifting the tide of everything.
Star Trek is not about the chosen one. I'm just
not only Star Trek.
Yeah.
Not only is Star Trek not about the chosen one, but Harry Potter and Hunger Games are both very much about the chosen one. So
Star Trek's not about the chosen one, but Star Trek has the events of the Star Trek films and television series, not always, but often, have universal ramifications, if not worldwide. But Blade Runner 2049 is a very intimate story, and I like the way that the noir of Blade Runner original kind of gives way to the more procedural of 2049. And just kind of, it's very, very methodical in the way that it dispenses information and peels back layers. And it's a long movie. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes, which is...
And you feel every minute of it, but...
You do. And, this past week, Ken started watching the Harry Potter series. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is also 2 hours and 45 to 50 minutes long.
I like that one.
Halfway through, you're like, oh my fucking God, this movie is long.
I don't feel that way about it.
Being fair, the first movie felt longer to me.
Okay, that's fair. But in those first two Harry Potter movies, like Ken pointed out, they don't have to be that long. And when I first saw them, I love them because I'd read the books. That they were the books on screen. Watching them now, when I'm much older, I'm like, okay, these movies have some serious pacing problems.
I disagree with you. I think that some of the later films have more pacing problems. I brought up Deathly Hallows Part 1 today. Constant pacing problems to the whole fucking thing. Goblet of Fire has a few pacing problems here and there. Order of the Phoenix, I don't want to come down too hard on because I think it's interesting because the one other dude that had a fucking opportunity to write a script for this franchise got to do that.
Speaking of someone who's 4 films in to watching the series for the first time.
You're not on the 5th. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of Steve Kloves as the writer of the Harry Potter films.
Yeah, Goblet of Fire thus far is the only film that felt like it had a single concise story to tell. Whereas the others felt like we have a bunch of stories we want to tell. Here's a few of them.
Okay, well, I think the point Hawk is trying to get at is Blade Runner 2049, by comparison, did not feel like those movies.
Thank you. This is not the Harry Potter podcast, God damn it.
This is the Sex Robot podcast.
This is the Sex Robot podcast.
I love sex robots.
Blade Runner 2049, like I was getting at, is
sex robots make you as stiff as a Q-tip.
Hey!
You don't feel the running time of this movie. Maybe in the back half you kind of do for a minute, but it once it kind of gets on track of when you figure out where it's going, like, okay, I'm back on board with it. And it's such a great story, and seeing these characters, one of the coolest elements of it was Ryan Gosling's character Kay has this digital girlfriend named Joy, and they're emotionally intimate. They really love each other. He buys her a device which allows her to escape the confines of the device that projects her across the living room, so she can go outside, and then later carries her with a portable device where she can come with him wherever he goes. And there's an important conversation when she's like, "Oh, put me into this device where I can come with you wherever you go." And he's like, "Well, if anything happens to this device that I'm holding in my hand right now, you'll be dead." And she's like, "It doesn't matter. I want to come with you." And she is artificial intelligence, and it's kind of interesting how this movie really plays with the ideas of how androids and artificial intelligence really feels. I mean, it all comes back to Philip K. Dick's original story. Do androids dream of electric sheep? How much do robots feel and dream and think and love, and how much of that, whatever they feel, makes them as close to human as they can be? And this movie plays with and kind of subverts a lot of those as well. Another thing that I really liked is that the original film brought up the question of whether or not Harrison Ford's character Deckard is a replicant. And you may be expecting them to address that in this movie, but they really don't. That's not the story this movie is telling. Watching Blade Runner 2049, who cares what you thought about Blade Runner's original narrative and whether or not Deckard is replicant, because that doesn't matter in Kay's story.
I'm really glad to hear that, honestly, just because, again, like I really felt I tried to watch the original, and I'm talking the original Blade Runner with the noir commentary where Harrison Ford's supposedly drunk. That's the only version of the film that I've seen, and I thought it was super boring, completely underwhelming, and I was just like, why is this a classic? Why do people like this?
The original Blade Runner, I think, is a very interesting concept and idea with a very clumsily told story. That's the original.
Right. Fair enough. I've been tempted to revisit it. I just haven't gone through with it yet. And there's that holy grail, the director's cut. They cut out all the bullshit. And
the final cut.
I've never seen it.
The final cut is the one you want if you watch Blade Runner.
I will keep that in mind, because I need to revisit this, and it's just it was in a college film school classroom that I watched the original Blade Runner with, again, that awful overrunning commentary by Harrison Ford where it doesn't sound like he's all there. I was at the bar.
So the original cut was like Harrison Ford's thing, right? And then like it doesn't really matter. But I would almost discourage you from watching the original Blade Runner before 2049 because I don't
watch the sequel then.
Just watch the sequel. I don't want the original to sully you on the on the sequel. I would say just look up what you need to know before watching the sequel. I've
seen the original. It's just hazy in my mind, but I think I can get on board with this.
I think all you've got to understand about the original is that what a Blade Runner is, what replicants are, and what Deckard and the girl, what happened between them at the end of the movie. That's really all you've got to know, because this movie is its own new thing in that same universe with some strands left over from the original. A couple of the things, I thought the soundtrack was pretty good. I would have liked to hear Johan Johansson's soundtrack before he got released in favor of Hans Zimmer. And I think that I hope that this is Roger Deakins' year for the cinematography Oscar, because this is a movie engineered for a big screen experience, like Bill said. I mean, I joke that it's too late for that because it's no longer playing in theaters, but I was talking to my mom before I went and saw the new one, and I said, okay, I'm gonna see Blade Runner. Talk to you later. She's like, let me know how it is. And my snap reaction upon getting out of the theater was that was one of the most incredible theater experiences of my entire life. Like, it's the sensory element of that movie, auditory and visually, was unmatched by anything in recent memory.
All right. So moving on to my number 2 is a film that hasn't turned up on anyone else's list. It is a movie that personally means a lot to me. It was a very moving film that I saw earlier in the first half of the year, The Lost City of Z.
Yeah, a lot of critics love this movie. I still haven't seen it, but it is on Amazon Prime. I have to get on it immediately.
So this movie is, first of all, in the way it is filmed, the way it is performed and put together, it is a modern incarnation of the kind of pacing you would expect from movies from like the 70s. There's a strong influence from films like Aguirre, The Wrath of God, and Apocalypse Now, and Fitzcarraldo. It is a period epic set in the the opening stages of the 20th century, in which it tells the story of explorer Percy Fawcett, who became convinced of the existence of an ancient and extinct civilization deep in the jungle of Bolivia, and he made multiple excursions out to the jungle to attempt and find it. And eventually, he and his son disappeared in the jungle, never to be seen again. And the film plays out Percy's experiences in the jungle, and desperately trying to find the civilization, alongside the fact that he was seen kind of as a charlatan or a hack at home. And it explores this character and the obsession that's caused from that, how that obsession affects the rest of his family and his poor fucking wife, who had to go through with having her husband leave every year or two to go to the middle of the jungle and probably, has with a good chance of never returning. First of all, we were talking about Robert Pattinson. He has a solid supporting role in this film as Percy's Man Friday, a retired military corporal who sort of becomes his navigator on the journey, who assists him along the way. Sienna Miller plays the suffering wife who has to deal with him, and it's a solid performance. That it's worth noting, Hawk, you expressed some concerns when I first mentioned this film because of the fact that this film stars Charlie Hunnam and also Sienna Miller, both of whom really haven't had the best of records as actors.
Yeah, or as Greg Kermode on BBC calls him, Charlie Humdrum.
I would say Sienna Miller has had a better series of performances than Charlie Hunnam.
Right.
She hasn't. I mean, they are equally bad.
Well,
no, they're not bad. I would say
okay. They have equally poor choices in projects.
They've been unlucky, I would say. Although Sienna Miller has still been. I mean, she was in Foxcatcher. She was in Black Mass. I mean,
she was in Black Mass.
Yeah.
She was in.
She was deleted from it, actually, but she was in it.
Oh, okay.
She was American Sniper, right?
American Sniper, yeah. She played the wife. Well, yeah. Okay.
You can't blame her for that baby.
No, I don't blame her for that baby. I didn't even notice the baby when I first saw the movie.
Oh, I noticed.
I noticed the arms a little bit, but I didn't notice, that it was totally.
I blame a lot of people specifically for that movie, so no specific discrimination.
I didn't think you were talking.
I thought she was good in it, honestly.
Now,
I
Bill,
didn't realize you were talking about the physical baby doll. I thought you were just saying you can't blame her for that baby.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that fake ass baby in the baby scene.
I know, I get it. I'm just
the Lost City of Z. Also, you mentioned Star Wars for your last film you chose, Bill. This is one of the rare non-Star Wars film appearances of Ian McDiarmid.
Oh,
yeah, Emperor Palpatine.
He's been in. He's more of a stage actor than anything. In his lengthy, decades-long career as an actor, he's only been in 15 or 16 movies, and a solid third of those are Star Wars films. So,
I had the Ben Mendelsohn effect when I saw him in this movie. I was like, this guy is sending Charlie Hunnam to his motherfucking grave. He is scheming.
And his character is, I mean, it's a small character. He gets a couple interesting scenes, but it's not like a major part. The film also has some excellent supporting roles. A very brief but powerful scene in which Franco Nero plays a corrupt Spanish Spanish landowner who basically has this plantation in the middle of the jungle, and is sort of it's an island of European civilization in the middle of nowhere, but that island is built on slavery. And there's this powerful scene later in the film where Fawcett and his team go through the same area, and that entire plantation is just gone. It is the jungle has overtaken it. You never know what happened to it, but the sense you have is things did not end well. And it's the overarching theme in this film is obsession, and it is I think honestly a real masterpiece. Now, you have to go into this film understanding that this movie, much like a couple of years ago, there was a most violent year with where really it's a film that owes its style and its pacing to a completely different era, which is why I'm sure this film didn't do well, because if this movie was made in like 1973 or 4, it probably would have been lauded and amongst the Oscar nominees, and it's not a film made for modern sensibility. But I love it for that, because in my opinion, the 70s was the golden era of cinema. All right, so we've made it to number 1.
We're alive.
We're live.
We're alive.
Less than 5 hours later.
Well, it hasn't been that long.
That's what I'm saying. Like last year was like 5 hours, and it's like, oh,
we're just going over by a little bit, really.
There's still gas in the tank. No, I'm saying that we're not. It's not a totally swollen runtime. I'm saying this is a good thing where we're at.
It's not as swollen as a Q-tip.
So in an effort to not swell things up anymore, I'm going to ask a couple quick questions and depart from our round robin a little bit. So we know Silvio is going to be Bill Leon's number 1. Am I not correct?
That's accurate, yeah.
Well, Bill Leon, are you
I'm
there?
answering for him. We all know Silvio's is fucking number 1.
And Shape of Water is my number 1.
Okay.
So, Hawk, what is your number 1?
My number 1 is Brigsby Bear.
And Bill A?
Lemon.
All right.
Nice.
So that's great. We all have our own films to talk about. All right, so then we'll continue with where we were at. Then, Bill A, what is...
So much for suspense.
Yeah,
really. Thanks, Ken.
I seriously thought we were going to have at least one other person with Silvio or Shape of Water, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Bill A.
Yeah. Oh, Lemon. Yes.
Commence Lemon.
Commence. Commence Lemon. No. Bill Leon, did you just agree with what Ken was saying a second ago?
My number 1 is Silvio. Yes.
Okay, good. All right,
that's a fact.
We're correct. All right.
Jack.
So Lemon. I was introduced to this movie through Hawk Ripjaw.
Same.
Yeah, I luckily for me it was released in theaters and on VOD for rental pretty much the same time. And so I watched it on Amazon and was completely blown away and in love with this film. It's got the exact sensibilities as related to humor as I do, which is self-deprecating humor.
Mm-hmm.
But also, we're not really deprecating ourselves. We're enjoying someone else being in a situation where everything's being shit on them and they're shitting on themselves at the same time.
Literally, eventually.
So we're kind of voyeurs to it. Yeah, literally, eventually, yes. And we're kind of voyeurs to the whole thing, So, there's time to let everything soak in and kind of almost put ourselves in those shoes in some ways. Not completely. We don't ever want to be in this guy's shoes and probably will never be that weird, but we can almost appreciate that things go wrong, and sometimes, life doesn't work out the way you want it to be. This is a movie where, what's his name? Brett Gelman?
Yeah.
Did I get it right? Okay. He plays this acting coach who isn't really making much of a living, but he's doing the best he can by being kind of a little snooty about, his work. Britta, you didn't, get after the character. What did she do wrong, Michael Cera? And then Michael Cera, who's a student at his place, who's even snootier than him. He aspires to be like Michael Cera or to be Michael Cera himself. Not just like literally living inside his skin. Like it gets to that weird of a point, you know. Brett Gelman's character is just so oddball, you know, and so down in the dumps that I don't even know, honestly, if he realizes how down in the dumps he truly is. I think he thinks he's a little depressed, but I think he also thinks a little highly of himself. Like he doesn't deserve what's happening to him. But we all know the truth. The truth is he kind of does deserve what's happening to him because he is.
Right. He's a shitty person.
He's a shitty person, and he's very socially awkward. So when you combine those two, it's not really a good equation. You know what I mean?
The way you phrase it, I just want to give some context to the way you phrase it. Like,
okay.
you have that situation, and you could apply that to a Greta Gerwig character or an old school Woody Allen character or this and that. Brett Gelman's character, like, especially with the Michael Cera thing, like, there's a point where he tries to get physically intimate with him, and Michael Cera's just like, what the fuck are you doing?
Right. I think that the social awkwardness is important to discount as part of his shitty character element, is because he weaponizes that awkwardness and his own self-hatred kind of, he turns it on everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So it's almost like that's kind of the key element to his awkwardness, is that part of his depression, or at least his self-loathing that he's forcing upon everyone else. And it's coming out as social awkwardness. I was at a point in the movie where I was thinking, like, does this guy have some sort of, is he on the autism spectrum, or like, I was trying to decipher what he was going after. And then I realized you guys are kind of right on this. What you guys were going after is that he's projecting his own hatred of himself onto everyone else. Like, it's their problem. No, it's not his problem. It's their problem. They're the ones that are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, his family, I don't want to say hates him, but they kind of resent him. You know, like his sister, who's pregnant for no reason other than I think the actress was pregnant, maybe. She writes him checks a lot. You know, she helps support him whenever she can. And there's this brilliantly acted sequence, and also brilliantly choreographed and shot sequence, where they're all after dinner. They're a family. They've eaten dinner, and they're sitting around, they're socializing, and they're playing a song on the piano. And one by one, we see each member of the family's reaction and behavior and attitude while they're playing this song. And Brett Gelman's the odd man out here. He is just so, like, going by the numbers here. He's just like, okay, I'm singing the song. I'm a part of this. I don't really want to be here. But then we go one by one to the other people, and we kind of see their story, too, through this song that's being sung. There are these shifting tones and behaviors and attitudes in just this one scene. And the scene doesn't last that long. It's like maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes. But it feels like it's much more complex than that. Like almost like time stops in a way, and you get to live inside this moment, and it's so intensely awkward and strange and weird, and you just don't want to be in that room. You want to exit that room as quickly as fucking possible just to get away from that anxiety. And it's so powerful that I couldn't help but laugh.
Yes,
that was the reason why I was laughing. Not so much because the scene was funny, but because that was the only emotional response I had to the anxiety I was feeling.
There was a few moments in the film like that for me.
There's a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Like, I found myself sitting there laughing, and I'm like, why am I laughing at this? Which made me laugh even more the more that I think about it, you know?
Right. There's this relationship he has with, is it his wife or girlfriend?
Fiance,
Judy Greer is the blind girl, right?
Judy Greer.
She's blind, which is an extra layer of to the situation, because he thinks he's doing her kind of a favor by being in a relationship with her. Like, oh, she's blind, you know. So,
and like in the opening scene,
so I'm better.
He pisses on the couch, and he's trying to hide it from her.
Right. He thinks he can get away with all this shit because she's blind, so I'll use it to my advantage, and when she doesn't reciprocate, when she starts blossoming and getting out on her own and everything, and moving out and breaking off the relationship, that puts him even more into the spiral, and he ends up in a relationship temporarily with the actress's name is Nia Long, right?
No. What's her name? That's not.
Is it Nia Long? I think it's Nia Long.
The
African American.
But the first thing he does, one of the first things he does is he's talking to her, and he says something that's like, someone who doesn't want to be perceived as racist would say is like, "Oh, my." So, I can't remember what he actually said, but it was kind of funny. He's like, "Oh, my friend dated a black person," or something like that. Like,
I don't remember.
Right?
You're right.
It's the exact thing that you don't want to say to someone who's of a different race, but at the same time, it's exactly what you think you should say.
Can we cut to the chase here and get to the fact that this encounter where they start dating ends with him running down the street with her grandmother in a wheelchair?
Because he's having a bad reaction to weed.
Yeah.
And not just that, but also because he's just weird and he's having this anxiety and panic.
Right. And also in his mind, he thinks that grandmother wants him to set her free.
Right. So he's taking her down the street and everything. And then Nia, I believe it is Nia Long. She comes up and she's like, what are you doing with my grandmother? And so she takes the grandmother back, and then he's like, sorry, I have to go. And then he's like, oh, I parked over there, sorry. And he, goes over to his car. And I think the car's broken or something, so he has to wait later in the movie for a tow truck. So that's just even more gasoline to the fire for this guy,
Is that in the credits?
That's the end credits, yeah.
The end credits of this really, like...
I think that was a real tow truck driver.
The movie, but I'm saying...
Before
they cut to the actual credits, the movie kind of ends on a bittersweet note. But once they cut to those credits, and it's like...
I wouldn't even say sweet. I would say it was bitter completely.
Okay. Oh, yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, they cut from that to the credits, which is just them standing around waiting for this tow truck, and it's got this indie rock music playing over it. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is so funny. Like, this is like the dark Albert Brooks version of a Zach Braff thing. You know what I mean?
That's a perfect way of describing it.
Yeah.
Al Brooks doing Zach Braff.
Yeah. Wow.
That's an edge right there. That's something special.
That's what I really took away. And I honestly, when I make my final best of list of the year, this will probably chart a little higher. I think that
me too.
Once I saw that Bill put this at his number one, and I knew we were going to be able to talk about it, I said, okay, I'll talk about Mommy, Dead, and Dearest, just because like not enough people have heard about it, and it deserves some exposure. Lemon will probably take that spot when I make my final list of the year, because I really left this film. I actually specifically, when I made my list for this podcast, put this below The Big Sick, just because I feel like as much as this kind of deals with things that are personal to Brett Gelman's life, it's like this isn't a direct interpretation of Brett Gelman's life, whereas The Big Sick was like legit.
I think this is kind of the nightmare version of Brett Gelman's life,
right? But that's what I'm saying. Like the Big Sick, it was more real.
I think this is realer than you think it is. Really, I think. This is getting at
different. They're different, but they're also like very comparable and very. They're both super interesting films.
Yeah, definitely. This is getting at the demonic soul that's inside of him. That's like battling the more angelic soul in a way. That's the truth that this movie's going at, is the bad side of him, the one that's on his shoulder that's telling him to do all the crazy shit.
I remember, I will say this, Bill, not to cut off, and you can totally follow up what I'm about to say, but I remember I watched this based on Hawk's recommendation, just like yourself. And the next day after I watched it, went on my phone and looked up Rotten Tomatoes reviews of it, and they were surprisingly kind of negative, like this is really episodic and this doesn't have a point to it. And I'm like, are you crazy? There's like I think we're on the same page here. Is like there's a lot of theming and there's a lot of meaning to get out of this that I think was lost on some critics, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, but I'd also like to point out too, this movie was made by a female filmmaker.
His wife, Brett Gelman's wife. Brett Gelman's wife. I don't remember her name, and I think her name's kind of hard to pronounce.
I can pull it up right now.
Bravo.
Janixa Bravo. Janixa Bravo, yes.
Janixa.
And Janixa Bravo, or maybe it's Janixa, I don't know. But she but she does an excellent job here. I think this is her debut feature film.
Her and Brett Gelman as writers, and I mean he didn't co-direct this, but he co-wrote it.
So might as well. Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's very much a joint project between the two of them.
But it comes off like really well polished and well done, you know, in terms of, like I said, the photography and the staging of the actors.
Let me say this right now, which you rank this as your #1 film of the year.
Yeah.
This is a better first film than Get Out. And I don't mean that as an insult to Get Out. I'm just saying Get Out had a lot of hype behind it. It had a lot of people just saying, this is the greatest thing ever, go see it. And I watched it and I was like, yeah, this is somebody's first film. It's got a lot of cool stuff in it. It's got a lot of dynamic stuff in it. Don't get me wrong. Lemon was a better first film.
I'll definitely be reworking my list after we've had these conversations.
I'm so happy about that.
Because
to hear that.
I mean, the fact that like I recommended Lemon and then now it's your #1 and like now I'm coming back around. It's like, man, I really did love that fucking movie. And
I would not have really been aware of this if you hadn't brought it to my attention. And I don't remember how I came
across it, but I watched it immediately. Like I saw the trailer and I was like, renting it. I'm canceling my plans for the evening. I'm renting it right now.
Brett Gelman has been working with like Tim and Eric and Comedy Bang Bang and you know all these different people doing
the other guys.
I've been aware of him for the longest time. I just wasn't aware that like
he had a small role in Twin Peaks: The Return. He played the manager at the casino, and then Jim Belushi and some other guy fire his ass and kick him in the balls.
He's in Stranger Things too, which I loved and I raved about. I love Stranger Things too.
I'm gonna have to see this movie.
Yeah, I think it's on Hulu.
Definitely see this movie.
Is it on Hulu?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's on Hulu. Yeah.
What did I?
Right.
What did I describe it as? Albert Brooks.
Albert Brooks doing Zach Braff.
Yeah. I stand by it.
It's got that smart edge, doing something that could be lesser, but is elevating it.
Yeah. I stand by that.
Okay, so we're gonna move on now to Bill Leon's #1, Silvio.
You already know what it is.
This is a movie I introduced to all of you.
Now, well, yes. However, I've talked about this before, but it is worth mentioning. Especially Hawk and Ken, if you haven't seen this by now, Kentucker Audley's little play-by-play of Richie Rich.
Motherfucker, I am friends with Kentucker Audley on Facebook and is my #3 of the year.
Okay, I'm saying, have you watched his little YouTube video on Richie Rich?
Yeah.
Okay.
He does video essays for the Talk House that are kind of criticisms of video essays themselves.
And not only that, he does like Rushmore with a Pop 90s soundtrack, and you know, like,
yeah, that was a great one.
Yeah, he's done. He's got another one. I don't remember what it is, but he's brilliant, and I love him. So Bill had posted the Richie Rich video. And I watched that and I was like, oh, this is really cool. So I think I friend requested Kentucker Audley, and I would constantly get Silvio in my Facebook feed. I'm like, what is this Silvio? I don't understand. And then they released the trailer, and I watched the trailer shortly afterwards. I mean, that got me interested, but shortly afterwards, Bill
and then I was able
Arsenault
to introduce you guys to the film through film festival stuff. And
yes.
And you guys watched it, and from then on, you know, it's been this thing between all of us that we just love.
Mm-hmm.
I put it at #1 for a very specific well, many specific reasons. It's not just one specific reason. I don't know. Like I could sit here and say, why did this movie beat Silvio out for your number one spot? But for me, all I can do is talk about why this is my number one. And so
and that's what we're here for. So go ahead.
Especially having recently purchased it on Amazon Prime, and then like basically I have done multiple rabbit streamings of this movie. I have done my best to kind of spread the word about it, and then I looked at some reviews which really, like, I think one was like Entertainment Weekly, and they talked about this one element of the film that I had never thought about before. All right, before I get into this, let's talk about what the movie's about. Silvio is a gorilla who works for a debt collection agency. This film is shot like Wes Anderson on a budget. In fact, this movie was kickstarted. A lot of the set design in this, like Silvio's apartment or the afternoon show set, and like, oh, it's
there's so much, like, so many little props and little tinkers and toys and little knickknacks and weird things in the background. There's even a contest where Kentucker Audley will give someone an autographed poster of the movie if they can come up with the accurate number of Cheetos that are in the movie. Individual little Cheetos they place throughout the film.
Wow.
I can't. I've tried, and he screenshotted a few specifically in the opening.
Yeah. He might be just playing a joke on us, but I mean,
I don't know, because I've had other people, like, I've told other people about that, and they've watched it, and they go, I can't really find any other Cheetos outside of the ones that you pointed out.
I think he's just kind of fucking with us, because I even suspected in my review for Film Threat about Silvio that this movie might be a prank on us in some weird, twisted way because of his video essays. But I discounted that because I was like, well, this movie's so genuine, though.
Yeah, you can't.
I'm still looking for the cheese puffs.
100, please do.
There's like 6 in the first minute alone.
Yes, there are. There are.
Like almost every shot in the first minute of the movie has one.
But back to the plot of the film, which I think is important to go over. I mean, this is very spoilery. If anybody listening to this is not aware of what we're talking about, this is very spoilery. I would say stop what you're doing. Go watch Silvio.
Stop what you're doing. Go see Silvio.
Go see Silvio. Baltimore, Maryland is a shithole.
We're on a time crunch. Stop it.
Anyway, yes. So.
Okay. All right.
We mean it. Start talking.
I've been talking. Where did I leave off? Y'all
the plot of Silvio in spoiler territory,
which is that.
Okay, Silvio is about a gorilla who works at a debt collection agency. He doesn't like his job. Nothing's moving in his life, but he has this little puppet show that he does that he's able to express his emotions through and things that he's dealing with through, called the Happy Times of, I think it's called, what is it?
Quiet Times.
Quiet Times with Herbert Herpels. And it's this very wonderful little almost mumblecore puppet show.
Yes.
That's very childlike, but it's also very complex and complicated at the same time. Well, through one situation to another, he ends up at Kentucker Audley's afternoon show that he does in his basement. And
he's assigned to collect the debt.
Right, but through one thing or another, he ends up being a guest on the show.
They confuse him for the
juggler. Yeah.
What is his fucking name, dude? He has the T-shirt. He's like, I'm Terrence, the mystery juggler.
Right.
That's what it is. And he's got a T-shirt with this fucking cartoon of him that says Terrence, the mystery juggler. I want that T-shirt. Please start selling that T-shirt.
So he ends up on the show. He has a new outlet to express himself, but it's doing shit that he's not totally 100% on, which is breaking stuff. What's the ape gonna break is what it's called.
That becomes the thing.
That becomes the thing. T-shirts, dolls, they sell a whole lot of shit.
That's another T-shirt that I want to purchase.
And the movie's very much about his struggle to express himself the way he wants to, and also Kentucker Audley's character, who is the host of the show, his struggle to be a success at what he wants to do, which is hosting this show. So the movie is very much about the creative process and and being able to successfully get across your own message to people and being yourself and being comfortable being yourself.
This movie has its cake and eats it too, because based on what you just described, you have Al Reynolds. I don't want to keep calling him Kentucker Audley because that's
the director's character's name.
Yes. Co-director, but Al Reynolds wants to do his show. He wants to do his thing. He's very passionate about, and he respects Silvio and Herbert. But once they get the deal from the Chandelier Company, it's like, oh, you can't do the puppet show anymore. And Silvio legitimately breaks things. Like he basically, and the review that I read, and I think it was Entertainment Weekly, which is crazy, but I believe it was an Entertainment Weekly review of Silvio that said, like, he's a gorilla. People expect him to be this off the hinge, I'm going to go fucking nuts and break things. And that's not who Silvio is. That's not who he wants to be. That's not who he wants people to think that he is. And that's because what's the ape gonna break? Like, that's what he gets pop. And the one kid, the bully kid, who's like, he gives him the guitar and he's like, you're that guy from TV. And he holds up the phone. He's like, all right, break it. And then later, like all that stuff. But as far as the scene where Silvio actually gets mad and starts to break things, it's a legitimately intense and kind of like, oh shit, he's really, you can feel the emotion of the scene and the tenseness of the physicality of it.
But what's funny about this is we're talking about these things in terms of his character and what he's going through. But the fact is, he's in a basement afternoon public access online internet show or whatever. Yes. And it's a segment called What's the Ape Gonna Break? And they're funded by a Chandelier Company.
Yes.
There's these gags and these weird moments that make you think this is satirical and maybe a joke. Mm-hmm. Not just a joke in the movie, but also a joke on us, possibly.
I never thought that.
For buying into it. But I never once thought it was sinister. I never once thought Kentucky was against us in some way. Like, haha, you're laughing at you're emotionally connected to this movie.
If you ever felt that way, the ending completely washes that away.
I don't get that. Like, if he is having a go at us, it's not in a bad way. It's not in an evil way. It's playful, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the number one for Hawk Ripjaw,
which is Hawk's muted. He must have.
It's a film called "I'm Taking a Piss Right Now." I'll be back at the sound of the beep. Leave your message at the tone.
So since Hawk Ripjaw has stepped out, I will talk about my number one: The Shape of Water.
The Shape of Water.
Before you continue, before anybody says a word, Silvio was one of my favorite characters of the year. I have only seen Shape of Water once, but I intend to watch it again. 2 mute main characters.
And
there you go.
By the way, both films are in the Baltimore area.
Yes, that's the connection.
Yes, I live in
Hawk is back,
sort of.
Way, so,
yeah, well, we're talking about Shape of Water. We'll talk about Hawk's thing when we're done.
Okay, just one.
Sorry, I had to pee so bad my legs were tingling.
The same way.
Your Q-tip was okay. Sorry, I had to make that joke.
Go ahead.
So the shape of.
I'm going to let Silvio go. Like a beautiful.
I also really, really, really loved Silvio. So I think Kentucky Audley did an amazing thing with this movie.
Albert Burney as well. It's a joint. It's a two people
joint.
Albert Burney was the guy in the Silvio costume in the movie, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Shape of Water?
Yeah, we're talking Shape of Water now.
We're going to talk about Shape of Water now. Okay.
The governor of Alabama was just
Doug Jones, who
he was great.
Surprisingly, the double life as a fantastic character actor.
He's very against abortion, right? Like, despite the fact that he was elected as like the liberal candidate.
I don't know.
He did something. He did something.
He's
bad.
really good at acting like a fish, though.
He's Abe Sapien. The whole time watching this, I was like, "This is like
Abe Sapien's over there."
Abe Sapien meets Creature from the Black Lagoon. It is Creature from the Black Lagoon.
So Ken, why was this your number one? Because I love this movie too, but I didn't even put it in my list for silly reasons. Like I said, we were making a list to be diverse and to get movies out there. But it really could have been my number one very easily, you know?
Simply put, in terms of filmmaking, this film hit every single checkbox in my book. Guillermo del Toro's direction is tight, and the movie is beautifully paced. The editing is excellent for that. It tells a unique story in an interesting way. It's a science fiction fairy tale, which should be
fairy tale romance.
Fairy tale romance, which should be. I mean, honestly,
I don't. Can I say something here?
Sure.
Oh, you mean you haven't said enough?
You're
okay. All right.
I'm being saucy. Go ahead.
Saucy.
Sauce is the boss.
Can you use the words? Can you use the words fairy tale and romance in a film where Michael Shannon is playing a legitimate psychopath?
Yeah. I think it can, because fairy tales.
Okay. I just really wanted to spotlight. Like, there were points in this. We'll get into it.
Well, let me ask you. In Cinderella, do you think that the evil queen is anything less than a psychopath?
But it's.
I want to kill this lady because I'm hold on. I'm thinking Okay, hold on.
Let me take over. I'm going to take over.
Snow White. Cinderella was the evil stepmother.
The year of our Lord 2017.
Women in all of those Disney freaking movies.
The year of our Lord 2017. You have this scene where Michael Shannon is fucking his wife, and like not even romantic. He's just fucking her to come, and he puts his hand over her mouth, and he's like, "You be quiet. You be fucking quiet." And then there's a scene later where he talks to Estevez. What the fuck's her name in the movie?
Estevez?
Sally Hawkins?
Sally Hawkins?
I meant the character's name.
Oh,
Elisa.
Elisa, yeah.
Esposito. Okay, sorry, I said Estevez. And he's like, he doesn't say this word for word, but he's like, "I want to fuck you because you won't make a sound," and I'm just like, oh.
It was terrifying. That scene.
Yeah, I was like, "What the fuck?"
As it should be. It should be terrifying when a guy tries to get away with some shit.
I'm not calling this a bad thing about the movie. I'm just saying that caught me off guard. Where I was like,
"This movie is surprisingly incredibly relevant to the whole Me Too movement in that it is a film
to a lot of things going on this year.
Oh yeah, and not just that, but gay rights and just in general,
it's
not just
very progressive.
Richard Jenkins wants to fuck the diner boy, and he's like, "What are you doing?"
It's not so much that he feels sexually to him, but he does want a connection to the guy.
Yeah, but
he's drawn to him as somebody that
he's drawn to him, yes, and maybe something sexual could happen, but he's more romantic to him than anything.
Here's the thing:
he spends the first half of the movie trying to sell his paintings of the different colored Jello, and finally, the guy at the diner understands his painting and really likes it. So he's like, "Oh my god, somebody finally understands me," and I think that romantic attraction. This movie has a lot of romantic attraction, unrequited or not, or one per.
But then it turns out,
and then Michael Shannon takes it when he doesn't deserve it.
I think that
right, and he doesn't understand the diner guy because the diner guy is a total racist, so he can't comprehend that shit.
He doesn't. He didn't know that until that black couple came in the restaurant. But
the racism thing was a little much. I mean, why couldn't the guy have just left it at being grossed out by the gay person? And like,
I think that was
he's also a racist because he's an extra asshole.
I think that was okay. It was showing the signs of the times, but it was also okay. Sorry, Ken. You can go ahead.
Okay, so this movie was my number one, and I haven't been able to get a word in edgewise for the last.
Okay, all right.
I'm just saying.
I know. We know. It should be your floor. Yes, we apologize.
Okay, so, what I was trying to get at earlier is that, in a way that I felt was truly unexpected and brilliant, Del Toro was able to combine two very different elements, that being the fairy tale and the science fiction story, because those are often at odds with each other. Fantasy, for instance, and science fiction it's very easy to confuse the two, but the way this film kind of blends them into one is very beautiful, and ultimately, even in spite of its science fiction story of a woman falling in love with the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Gill Man, this is a very human, a very human drama, and a very human story about really just everybody needs to be loved. In their own way, every single character, and yes, even Michael Shannon's character, has this need to be accepted. Now, Michael Shannon's character, you may not have caught it in your first viewing, but there's the entire subplot involving the fact that his career, and he knows his career will be over if he doesn't get this situation squared away, and he's desperately seeking the acceptance of the general, who he and the general go back all the way to the Korean War together, and they treat him as sort of a father figure. And so, yeah, everyone in this film, Richard Jenkins, who plays the gay next door neighbor.
Yeah. I assumed up to a certain point that him and the lead were having sex, but I guess I'm wrong.
No, you're
bathroom, Bill.
You're wrong.
Voice is echoing.
It's echoing on your end, yeah, but that doesn't matter. I think I love what you're saying, Ken, about Michael Shannon's character wanting acceptance. I think to add on to that, he's so insecure. He buys this car out of a need to feel empowered in some way. A car that he knows is bullshit, but he's getting anyways for appearance purposes.
Because somebody told him that he should have it.
Exactly.
And that it would make him, it would make him
virile and
a more important man, and he wants desperately to be seen as such.
Which is ironic because
Spencer's character is also someone who wants. There's the it doesn't pay off until, in my opinion, the most powerful scene of the movie, in which you finally see this husband that she's been complaining about all along. Her character, she wants to be recognized by her husband, who's never truly, thanked her for the fact that she takes care of his every need as a doting.
He's kind of a deadbeat, yeah.
Do they have children that we never see? Is that established?
I don't think they do. I think
it's just a relationship,
just the two of them.
Yeah.
And we have also something I enjoy about Guillermo del Toro is he doesn't shy away from gross out moments, particularly. He has a way of servicing a plot with these moments that could be considered exploitive in any other film, but he finds a way to make it work. I'm going to talk about the Samson and Delilah speech.
Well, for me, you can go into complete detail about that in just a second. I don't mean to cut you off, but for me, the scene, I physically cringed when the Russian scientist gets shot in the cheek, and then Michael Shannon grabs the fucking wound in his cheek and drags him across the I was cringing and looking away from the screen.
And by the way, there's some symbolism in that he literally fish hooks.
Okay.
But the Samson and Delilah moment, that's particularly grotesque.
He never put his hands on her in that scene.
No, he didn't. He didn't have to.
He didn't have to. And in fact, if anything, the only person who was physically hurt in that scene was him.
Yeah. It should be noted that throughout the movie, he's in a constant state of progressing decay. His body is literally killing itself throughout the film.
And he's letting it happen.
The very first scene you see him in.
Say it again.
The first scene you see Michael Shannon is he approaches the cleaning ladies and he introduces himself and all that, and then he goes away for like 5 minutes or probably less, and then shows back up with, he comes staggering out of the facility, that one chamber, and he's bleeding from his goddamn stomach, and he collapses to the ground.
And they find fingers that are left in the room, and throughout the movie, his fingers are stitched on and everything, but they're constantly turning into black colors, and eventually they turn all black. They're dead. It's dying, and his body is essentially dying. It's symbolic of his progression as a character. He's getting more and more beastly as the movie goes on. He's more of a monster and a beast than supposedly the one that he calls the monster, the Gill Man.
And the film's opening narration is wonderfully prophetic, in which Richard Jenkins' character refers to the beast that almost destroyed everything, and that beast, that monster, is not Gilman, very much Michael Shannon.
But Samson and Delilah, that's his peak right there.
Yes. Oddly enough, there's a Samson movie coming out next month.
Yeah, who gets to review that? You?
I actually almost was stuck with it, but at the last second, I'm reviewing Den of Thieves now.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
And
is that a good trade-off? I don't know.
Well, I found Den of Thieves to be mildly entertaining.
Yeah, I think that trade favors Ken immensely.
Yeah.
Well, so what else about Shape of Water is there to talk about, really? I mean, there's obviously the performances. Sally Hawkins is great and evocative as the mute woman.
She's really good. Yeah.
She's particularly good.
Performances of the year, and almost totally silent.
I love the fact about her character that she is a grown woman. She's sexual. She's inventive. She's fluffy. She's creative. She's clever.
Yeah, it would have been too easy to cast like a teenager or something in this role and have her be kind of a starry-eyed dreamer.
Yeah, no, she's a grown woman, and she's not stuffy about it either. She's trying to live her life the best way she can.
Exactly. She's made her way through life pretty far already.
She lives above a fucking movie theater. That's amazing too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's more of a film fan thing, I feel like.
But in a way, there's kind of something to that, because she's living basically in the brain center of a dream factory. When you think about it in another way, she's living above a movie theater, above a place that's meant for escapism and for fantasy.
I am all for movies referencing the fact that movies are a wonderful thing, because they are. And anyone
that's why we're here,
people these days, I've noticed, are quick to criticize. Oh, it's another Hollywood movie about making movies, and you know what? Those are sometimes some of the best movies.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I loved it when Gilman is in the movie theater. He breaks out of the room and he's just watching this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what the movie was. I think it was like a sword and sandal movie.
Yeah, a Bible epic of some sort. I'm trying to remember which one it was.
Yeah. But there's so many great scenes in this movie. There's the one where there's a musical number that breaks out of nowhere.
I want to talk about that.
Okay.
In addition to, Ken, if you got more stuff to say.
I'm actually done. So go.
Okay.
There were 3 moments that I laughed unintentionally at this, and the first, and I don't consider it a slight against the movie. I'm sure if I watch it a second time, they will be less jarring moments, and I will be able to appreciate it a lot more. But okay, so the first time she has sex with Gilman in the bathroom, I laughed just because I was like, I had heard people joke that the girl fucks a fish.
No, that's exactly what the movie.
I did not know that that's like literally where it was going to go. So when she got into like, I laughed.
But it's more like she's making love with the fish.
The second thing.
It was nothing to do with the sex, more than the fact that they flooded the entire fucking apartment.
That's the second time.
That's the second time they fuck.
That's the second time they fuck, and that bothered me even more because I was like, listen, just closing the door and putting a towel on the bottom doesn't keep that much water in your fucking bathroom to where it's going to become a goddamn sensory deprivation tank.
Okay, but that's not the point of the scene.
Bill, I have a counterpoint to that.
I knew it. What is it?
Have you seen Captain Ron?
No. I don't know.
Kurt Russell.
Nobody's seen Captain Ron except me.
I've seen some of Captain Ron.
So,
I know what you're talking about.
So there's a scene in Captain Ron where the Martin Short and his wife are in the shower on board this boat, and they accidentally drop a washcloth, and it gets jammed down at the bottom of the drain, and the door on the shower is locked and they can't get out. And slowly the water level inside the shower rises almost all the way up to their heads before Kurt Russell shows up and fixes it. And I can vouch. I've when I was a little kid, I used to actually, after seeing that movie, I used to actually try that, like shoving a washcloth or towel into the cracks of a shower. You can get the water pretty high in those fucking things if you're.
Yeah. It's funny how movies can kind of inspire that stuff.
So what I'm saying is, it's not completely unfeasible.
But the point of the scene was something greater, though.
That is the pickiest of the knittings.
Yeah, well, what's the third moment, Bill?
The third moment that made me laugh is when it started to be this goddamn who's the dude? Bubsy Berkeley, fucking not Bubsy Berkeley, but you know what I'm saying. They did the whole
dance number.
They did the song, but I'm saying I laughed when that started. By the time it was over, I got it, and I was like, okay, this works. But just the initial transition from them at the table to her with the spotlight, to the zoom in, to the, now all of a sudden we're in an old black and white movie. I was like, what the fuck just happened?
I thought that was a really good scene.
Guillermo del Toro is what happened. That's what he does.
I love weird, quirky shit like that. So I'm not, in no way am I saying that this is a bad thing about the movie. Just the random transition made me.
Well, I don't think believe it or not, I don't think it was as random as you.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it was set up. I understand that it was set up because they love. She was bringing him old records, and I get it. And
it wasn't just that. I think
her and Richard Jenkins loved the old movies, and they would tap dance and all that. I get it. Like it just.
It wasn't just that. I think even in that scene, it was.
I didn't expect to see Doug Jones in a fucking Gilman suit doing ballroom dancing.
Well, in musicals, when the song breaks out, that's when the emotions are most high, typically, or intense in some ways, and whether it's high or low. And in that scene, they're at the table. Gilman is eating an egg, and he's even saying "egg" in sign language, which I thought was kind of funny. And she's trying to sing a song, but she's mute, so she can't completely get out what she's saying. But she's the one feeling all these emotions at this one moment, and suddenly the musical breaks out.
One last thing I want to talk about with this is that I have a book, Time Out, British Time Out Guide to Film. It's a 2003 edition. And I decided after I watched the Shape of Water today, I looked up the Creature from the Black Lagoon movies in it. And it says that I haven't seen the Creature from the Black Lagoon movies.
You should. So you should at least see the first one. That one's very good.
Yeah, see that and see Swamp Thing.
The first I don't know if that's sarcasm or not, but
no, you should seriously see Swamp Thing.
But okay, you're in the book.
The first creature from the Black Lagoon has to do with, he's in love with a girl. He wants to get with the girl. The third creature from the Black Lagoon movie has him being captured and put into a laboratory and having experiments done on him.
Yeah. It's worth noting that some movie theaters in my area are actually showing a double feature of The Creature from the Black Lagoon and The Shape of Water.
That's awesome.
Guillermo del Toro is a massive Creature from the Black Lagoon fan.
Oh, I know, no. Apparently, I've done my research on this. Apparently, Guillermo del Toro was at one point in charge of a Creature from the Black Lagoon remake, which for Universal that just kind of deteriorated into nothing.
It turned into something beautiful in the end. Into shape.
Well, yeah, because he took his idea for it and made it into his own thing, which, and I mean, I don't think you can get around the Creature from the Black Lagoon comparison when it comes to Shape of Water. But what he's done with it is wholly his own.
The other thing worth noting about the Shape of Water is that the writer, the original guy that had the concept, met with Guillermo del Toro, and they both had their ideas for it, and Guillermo said, yeah, I want to make this my next movie. The two of them then decided that the original guy would write his book, and Guillermo would make his movie, and neither would talk to the other about their individual projects until each was done. Mm-hmm. So when the book releases here in a couple of months, it's going to be very different from the film. One of the biggest things being that Michael Shannon's character is a secondary protagonist, and there's at least a couple of chapters centering on the creature in his original habitat.
Seeing the film, I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, no, that sounds crazy.
Yeah, because I think of Michael Shannon, and I'm like, oh, he's going to rape somebody.
He's the same age as Leonardo DiCaprio. Did you know that?
He looks older, honestly.
He does look older.
They're both 42. Beautiful face.
I think we can all agree that Michael Shannon is just. We're all big fans. We're all big fans of Michael Shannon.
Oh yeah, how can you not be?
Especially when he's playing Bigfoot.
Is that happening? Did that happen? Can I watch this?
Sort of. It's
Pottersville.
Pottersville. It's on Netflix.
Oh, that was bad. Oh, Lord Jesus, that was a bad movie.
Oh no!
All right,
so to wrap this sucker up, Hawk, your number one.
My number one was Brigsby Bear. It's about a guy who grows up in a bunker because and this couple,
Mark Hamill and I can't think of the actress's name right now.
Me neither. Yeah, they keep him there throughout most of his life, and they use this children's television show of their own design called Brigsby Bear.
Delivered on VHS tapes.
On VHS, which is about this bear and he's wacky adventures, and there's an evil son and all kinds of crazy stuff. Basically, it teaches him about life, and he learns everything from there.
And to never leave the home. And
there's a lot of fun flavor in the set design. Like a poster that says "Curiosity is bad" or "Curiosity is unhealthy" or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first few minutes of the film, he gets rescued by the police and returned to his real family. And upon learning that Brigsby Bear was never a real show and the online forum that he participated in was never real either, he decides to get some of his new friends together in the real world and make and film a conclusion to the Brigsby Bear story. And I thought this was fantastic for a number of reasons. And I talked to Will Ashton on this. And
Will, I will say this: Will has been a champion for this movie for.
It's a wonderful movie.
Probably since it came out, like on the indie circuit.
Well, right. Like I was going to say, it is also his favorite film of the year, and I wish he was here to talk about it with us because he and I were discussing it a few days ago over chat. And one thing that I mentioned about it is that the movie just perfectly encapsulates two very major things. One being social awkwardness and having trouble fitting in, and the second being the thirst for creating and by extension being afraid of other people seeing it. And I think one of the great things about this is that the main character, when he gets released from the bunker, he's interacting with people, he doesn't really know how to do it. He has his first drink, he has his first drug, he has his first hand job, and all these things are things that adults his age probably get a lot of, and those are all things that he reacts to in different ways. But even then, just talking to people and interacting with them is just so weird, because he has no frame of reference for how to talk to people and how to respond to stimuli in his environment. And there is this innocence to it that I think is really fantastic, because he sees everything so differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he decides to create this show because, anybody else would be like, man, I don't know if I can do this. That's a lot. But he's like, he goes to the police captain and said, I want all this shit from the show. I'm going to make my own version of it. What?
I had a video that auto played. I was trying to pull up something from Brigsby Bear, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
He tries to get all the props and stuff from the movie so he can make the movie, because he wants to do it. It doesn't matter. Like, one of the great moments of the movie is when he's with his counselor and she's like, oh, that's the Brigsby Bear is something your fake dad made up. And you think that'd be something traumatizing for him, but he's like, yes, my dad knew Brigsby Bear. And he approaches everything so differently. And there are several moments in this movie where the movie could take a dark turn, and it could be something sinister or sad or something that takes a turn that changes his outlook, and the end of the second act conflict. But the movie takes everything that could go in that direction and makes it something positive, even to the point where it addresses why his fake parents took him in the first place and what that meant for them. It's kind of messed up, but it's not something you'd see on a documentary or something, or the news of, this kid got abducted and killed or something. Like, it's still all very positive in its own way. It's such a warm movie. And then when he makes his film, he's terrified, and there's some light end of movie spoilers. He's terrified of what everybody else will say about it. So frightened that he doesn't even want to be with them in the theater when they watch his finished product. And then where it goes from there is probably one of the most powerful moments of anything I've seen this year. Like, it's such a positive film and so uplifting, and the way that it portrays these different situations and how different people see the world, and different people that create, and how those people can interpret things and want to see things and tell their stories. And how that this guy, I can't remember his name, I don't know why, but
he's on SNL, isn't he?
Yeah, well, the actor's Kyle Mooney, right? I don't remember the character's name.
Oh, yeah.
He interacts with these characters who, in the initial party when he meets them, they should be treating him like, this guy's a fucking weirdo, we don't want to deal with him. But they all approach him with such warmth and acceptance, and they want to be friends with him and know more about him and help him and just be his friend. And I think that is so cool, just with the way that all that's done. Like, any other movie would treat this same kind of narrative with a lot more cynicism and darkness and probably bleaker humor. And like, oh, look at this loser who's doesn't know how to interact with people and everybody fucking hates him.
Or they would have the room moment where he breaks down and feels broken and completely out of sorts, and really it's about this fairly optimistic guy who makes the best of a horrifying situation.
And what's funny too is there's the character of Greg Kinnear, who's the cop. He actually has a sit down with the cop to talk about the props that he needs for his movie. And Greg Kinnear's character talks about how he used to be an actor, or wanted to be an actor even. And he's like, oh, I did a play once, I did Shakespeare, da 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 da. But I ended up becoming a cop because, life happens, and you end up, and then Kyle Mooney says, like, that's really sad that you didn't get to do what you wanted to do.
But at the same time, he's like, oh my God, that's perfect. You should be in my movie too, at a certain point.
Right, exactly. But what I'm saying is his mindset is so pure that the people around him, who typically in a story like this would be the normal people, are actually kind of out of whack themselves. Yeah. They're the real ones that are out of whack. He's actually stable for the most part.
Yeah. So, and the way that his mindset of approaching everything is, like you said, so pure, and it's so nice to see that kind of approach to everything. Like, he's not cynical. He's in like you said, when in a room moment where eventually he gets this point where it all comes crashing down on him, is like, wow, I'm really an awful person. Like, I'm not really an awful person myself, but this has turned me into something that I can't really evolve out of as a human being. But instead of that, the movie subverts every single opportunity of that, and Kyle Mooney's character grows outward at every single moment and sees things in a brighter light, and takes situations and sees them in his own way, and transforms everybody else around him, and everybody else accepts him for that as well. And it's like, I think that's the kind of, it's not really quite the Paddington moment for me, because I don't really think anything that I've seen in forever can really match that kind of acceptance and the world needs this movie now type of thing. But it's this year's type of movie that everybody could learn from the positivity in this movie. Not only from it's very abstract and frankly abnormal how he approaches things, and nobody in that type of situation would ever have that kind of approach. But I think looking at that sort of thing from a different perspective is a lesson for any situation, can be seen from a different perspective. Maybe not any, but I don't want to throw cast too broad of a net, but you guys know what I mean. It's,
yes,
there's so much positivity in this movie.
I'm gonna, if I don't watch this tonight, I will watch it tomorrow, because I have been infinitely fascinated with this since I first heard of its existence.
I mean, I think I told you like 4 months ago, Bill, that you'll watch this and you will absolutely love it. Like, I'm
honestly really
positive that this will end up making its way onto your list.
It completely crossed my failed to cross my mind today. Like, I didn't even think of it. It's just that's honestly, like, it's got no marketing, it's got no budget. I don't know about the budget of the film, but like, you know, the only reason I've heard about this is word of mouth from other critics.
Mm-hmm. Well, two of the things I loved about it, the soundtrack was really, really great. The soundtrack was fun and whimsical, and then the final piece playing during the ending was genuinely tear-jerking. It wasn't sad; it was just emotional in a really good way. And then the kind of filmmaking scenes reminded me of Gentlemen Broncos, in that they're kind of shitty looking, but there's this workman-like. There's this, not workman-like, but there's this look about them. What?
Effort?
There's an effort, and it looks kind of patched together, but in a way that real passion was put into it. It's got its very distinct fingerprint to it.
I was going to compare it to the Sweden movies and Be Kind, Rewind.
That was the other comparison, that it really is almost a companion feature to Be Kind, Rewind, of people that come together and just make their thing because they want to, and tell their people their story, and everybody else comes together and sees it and appreciates that story. Exactly.
And oddly enough, that's also something for a lesson from Silvio, because Silvio is about have what you want to do and do it.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, 3 of the 4 movies in our top, our number 1 slot, are movies involving Brigsby Bear, guy in a bear costume, Shape of Water, Gill Man, and Silvio, guy in a gorilla costume.
People wearing animal suits.
And Lemon, a guy who just is in skin that he's uncomfortable with.
Yes.
Blade Runner 49, robots in human skin. Oh my God, there's a fucking theme this year.
Bill, you took the words right out of my mouth.
All right. Well, on that bombshell,
you have a creature in human skin. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
this has been one heck of a long episode, and
not nearly as long as the other ones.
Not as long as last year.
I've pointed out before, we had Zach. It was 5 people going over 10 movies.
Instead of 5, we went through 10. Yeah,
it was madness.
So I want to thank you if you did hang on for as long as it took to listen to us rant and rave and argue and complain. But we made it, and we will reconvene next year with our top and bottom films of 2018. Meanwhile, next week will be a new movie catch-up week where we'll talk about seeing 2018 movies that we've seen, if any of us have, which I have. So
I've seen some. Don't hit the button yet. Bill Arsenault's top film
for me to push the button.
Oh, I thought you did push the button. I thought you were fucking with me. Bill Arsenault's top what do you call it? Top 10 or top 1? Bill Arsenault's favorite film of 2017, Lemon. Bill Leon's top favorite film of 2017, Silvio. Christopher Sheridan's top favorite film of 2017.
Hawk Ripjaw.
Oh, I've already fucked up.
God damn it.